Hello and welcome to the SRO Esports GT Series, the new 2020 championship, and we've got the first round here today at Silverstone. My name is Jack Nichols. Thank you very much for joining us ahead of what is going to be a 5-week program of GT racing around the virtual world using the Assetto Corsa simulation. I will be here. We're presenting the coverage. Of course, we will have David Addison and John Watson in commentary. We'll be joined by Ben Constanduras as well. And the way that this is going to work is today you will see two 1-hour races. The first is for the pro class. That is for the professional real-world racing drivers. They'll be going head-to-head on this Silverstone circuit for an hour in GT3 cars that you'll see in the GT World Challenge powered by AWS later this year. And then we've got the silver class, which is for invited sim racers. That's the second 1-hour race that we'll be seeing a little bit later on today. A lot of those big names that you will have seen in the SRO charity event if you watched that a couple of weeks ago. And there is also the AM class. We won't be seeing them race today. They're racing on Saturdays, but those are for qualifiers who enter the game just from their home themselves, and you can enter the game if you want. Head along to the SRO Esports website if you want to get involved in that. The first race is going to be at Silverstone here today, and as I say, I'm going to be joined by David Addison, the voice of GT racing. David, thank you very much for joining us. You enjoyed your first time out in the charity challenge. You're looking forward now to, things mattering more.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Monza was a fantastic trio of races, and now we come to Silverstone, where I think people are going to take it more seriously because, as you say, it does matter. There is this championship. There are points at stake. There's going to be success ballast after today's races going into the next rounds of the championship. And you look at the entry list, and not only is it like a who's who of GT racing for the Pro Series and sim racing for the Silver Championship, but you look at the manufacturers that are getting involved now, Jack, and they're putting in proper esports teams, and the quality of driver is exceptional. We're in for, as you say, 1-hour sprint races, so no pit stops. It's just elbows out from the moment we get underway. And on the back of what we saw at Monza, now splitting it, so you've got one race for the real world drivers and one race for the sim stars. This is going to be awesome entertainment.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. A few big names entering today. We're going to have Jenson Button in the first race. We're going to have Charles Leclerc in the first race as an SRO wildcard entry. But before we get and look at the grid and how qualifying ended up, let's take you round the Silverstone lap. This is the Fanatec track guide, and we are with Seb Morris in the Bentley around Silverstone. Let's take a look.
Hi, my name's Seb Morris, a Bentley Motorsport Works driver, and I'm going to take you for an onboard lap of my home circuit at Silverstone.
So this is a lap of Silverstone. We start the lap into Copse, turn 1, brake down to 4th and 50 metre board, rear goes light, over the curb, straight back on the power in 4th gear. Exit's really important there, but also is your entry. Down to Maggots Beckett's, over the curb on the left, 5th gear, 240 kph. Over the curb, down to 4th for the left, over that curb, down to 3rd for the right, over that curb, straight back on the power. Power is really important onto this back straight now. Onto the hanger straight. We always use this bridge as a reference to see what sort of time and speed we're doing. A little bit of time to relax. Look at the entry, which is the curve on the left, down to 3rd. We get up on this curb here, slightly off camber, difficult corner. All the way on the power, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Now we're looking at the curb for reference braking here, down to 2nd. Over the curb on the left-hand side, through club. Throttle's difficult there, up through 3rd and 4th, flat round this right-hander here. Now we're looking into Abbey, the new turn 1. Over the curb on the left for reference, dab of brakes, get the nose in, over the inside curb, straight back on the power. This is flat now through Farm Curve. Into Village, use the curb as reference, down to 2nd. Try and get that curb there, just missed it. Down to 1st for the loop. Now throttle's really important here. We're bang on the throttle. We want no wheel spin, we want ultimate traction. Down the straight, down the Wellington straight. Again, bit of time to relax, use the bridge as reference, see how your lap's going. Braking reference is this sign here, down to 3rd, down to 2nd, get the nose in. Important you get this curb on the left here to get the nose in. Up to 3rd, back down to 2nd for Luffield. Wait, bang, straight on the power. Dancing with the rear, through Woodcut, flat out, and that is a lap of Silverstone Grand Prix.
So that was a look around Silverstone with Seb Morris in the Bentley. Great to have Fanatec on board, an amazing producer of wheels and pedals that everybody is now getting on board with now that real racing has stopped for the time being and people are getting involved in the sim racing. As you can see, a long lap around Silverstone, and the best lap time we had in qualifying was Fabrizio Crestani in the McLaren, a 1 minute 56.31. But David, let's just talk about some of the drivers we'll be seeing first up in this pro race, starting, I suppose, with the big draw, which is Charles Leclerc, the Formula One Grand Prix winner, driver for Ferrari. It's amazing to have him entering here.
Jack will need an hour to get through the entry list, I think. It's so good. But you're absolutely right. I mean, to have Charles, who is, like many of the Formula One drivers, in demand with all of these esports championships now taking place, for him to come into this, to want to do it, is fantastic. It's a real boost, isn't it, for the SRO Esports GT series. And, of course, he's going to be in a Ferrari. Now, it was a Ferrari that won at Silverstone in a 3R endurance race last year. So you could argue he's got the tools for the job. How easy it's going to be for him to adapt to this sim racing platform, and of course for a GT car, even though it's a Ferrari, we'll wait and see. But yes, to have him in the entry, fantastic. But then look at the rest. You've got lots of factory drivers, Ben Barnicoat for McLaren. You've got Matteo Cairoli for Porsche, for example, Jordan Pepper for Bentley, Raffaele Marciello in a Mercedes. I mean, the entry list just goes on and on and on. What have we got? 49 drivers in total went out into the qualifying session. Yeah, there's going to be an awful lot that goes on during this race. And one thing we're being told is that tyre degradation is going to be more of a factor here than it was at Monza. So in the final third of the race, you might well start to see people, if they've gone too hard too soon, struggling with tyre wear. We'll wait and see.
Okay, that's going to be interesting to keep an eye out on. We've also got Jenson Button racing in a Team Rocket RJN Nissan. And I think before we get underway, just a quick word on Riccardo De Villa, who passed away yesterday. He was a huge part of that Nissan RJN team, wasn't he? That raced in what was the Blancpain Endurance Series for years.
And he'd come from Brazil. He'd got a great pedigree with the Fittipaldis and lots of different single-seater championships before coming into GT racing. He was in his early 70s, Riccardo. He always had so many stories to tell. Many, I fear, will go untold now. But he was a great part of many teams over the many decades that he was involved in the sport. And yes, his loss felt by the GT paddock, certainly, but by the motor racing community as a whole. You're quite right.
Absolutely. So this is the last couple of minutes of the pro driver qualifying that we're looking at the moment. Fabrizio Crestoni on the top of the times, with Ben Barnicoat in second, Louis Delatraz third, Matteo Cairoli in fourth position. You'll see that Seb Morris, who we went round with in the Bentley, down in 12th spot as it stood at the time, because this happened a couple of moments ago, and we'll get underway with the race in about 5 or 6 minutes. But it's interesting, isn't it, David, when we come into these esports, because we don't know with the real world drivers who's going to be good. We don't really know who has had a lot of experience in the past, who's brand new to it. So the running order is always a bit of a surprise.
Absolutely right. You tend to think, well, if you're a factory GT driver, you're, of course, going to be well versed in this, but it's not. It's a different art altogether. And we saw at Monza, didn't we? Certainly in the final, for example, where it was the best of the day put together, that it was the sim racers that showed the way home. It's going to be interesting at the end of today to have a look at relative lap times, for example, to see how the pro drivers, the real world drivers, shape up in their lap times compared to the sim racers. And inevitably, the more time you spend, you're going to get better and better. We know, for example, that there are lots of the real world drivers taking part in multiple championships, so they're spending more and more time on the sim as they become more and more adroit at doing it. But yeah, drivers that don't do so well today might well be up at the front by the end of this championship, just because they've had the extra track time and they've learned more.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there, actually, because, as you say, drivers who are sort of brand new to it now, by the time we've done another 4 races, they'll be well and truly dialed in. You can see Charles Leclerc there on the tower on the left-hand side was running in 21st place, but a few last-minute laps shuffled him down the order. Jenson Button will end up 15th on the grid for the Team Rocket RJN car, so there were a few laps that came in right at the end, but nobody got near Fabrizio Crestani in the McLaren. 0.4 of a second up the road from Ben Barnicoat in another McLaren. So I thought that was a very impressive lap from Crestani.
Indeed so, because he's never been necessarily one of the real outright stars in international GT racing. He's done a lot of miles, and he's a competitive driver, but he's not necessarily somebody that you would always put your money on to be at the top of the times. Others, for example, like Luigi De Lorenzi, to be fifth for the Aston Martin brand, that's another good effort. Ben Tusting, historic single-seater racer, eighth, another impressive effort. So there are quite a few surprises in who is up there, surprises in who is further down the order, but over the course of 60 minutes of racing, I think it's all going to shake out.
Yeah, Louis Delatraz across the line and remained in third position in the Porsche, doing a 56.78, so only 0.07 of a second away from getting on the front row. It is going to be a rolling start, as you may have seen in the SRO Charity Challenge that we had earlier on this month. But it is Fabrizio Crostani that will start on pole position. Ben Barnicoat alongside him on the front row. Louis Delatraz third. Matteo Cairoli in fourth spot. Raffaele Marchiello, one to watch out for. He's a real front runner in the real world and looks as though he's going to be in the fight for this one, starting in sixth place in the Mercedes. Jordan Pepper completing the top 10. And a good drive from Alex Buncombe, who was a little bit further off the pace than that, I feel, at Monza in the charity race. So he seems to have found a bit of time. And his good friend, Jenson Button, will be starting in 15th on the grid. And there you see Charles Leclerc just behind Ezequiel Perez Companc, which is not a sentence, David, I ever thought I'd say.
No, it's another of the quirks of this strange period in which we live, isn't it? But yes, you're absolutely right. It's a very jumbled grid. It's a jumbled entry list, that's for sure. But yeah, just savour it, because you look back on this and you look at the names. It is, as we said a little while ago, a who's who almost of international motorsport. And now the drivers getting themselves set, ready to go racing.
Yeah, I think we will look back on this time, won't we, as a period where the kind of grids that we're seeing are remarkable, and people won't believe they happened, and they sort of didn't really happen because they're happening in the virtual world. Before we get the race underway, let's bring in Ben Constanduros. Ben, you were with us for the SRO Charity Challenge, back with us again for the main event, the SRO Esports GT Series, this 2020 championship. How are you feeling coming into this event, and what are you expecting from it, and what do you make of Assetto Corsa? Lots of questions there.
Absolutely love Assetto Corsa Competizione as a platform. One of the newest sim platforms that we've seen over the last couple of years, and it really does provide us visually with such a treat, as well as from a driving perspective, such a tricky thing to really master. I got it on my computer the other day, have been trying to, and well off the pace. I'm very impressed to see the likes of Charles Leclerc, for instance, jumping in and being straight in the middle of the pack, out-qualifying Dennis Lind, who is in this grid but really has struggled at Silverstone in the Lamborghini. Perhaps BOP playing its part.
Yeah, that's a big surprise, actually, Dennis Lind, because he was the front runner as far as the real world races were concerned, David, in Monza, and he's got a huge history racing in R Factor and Assetto Corsa and all sorts of games.
And indeed, as a brand, it was a Lamborghini on pole position at Silverstone in the real world last year. So yes, you're right. Added all together, you'd expect him to be up there. But of course, they'll blame traffic and they'll blame BOP, just like they do in the real world. Somebody got in the way, or a gammy internet connection. So there's a whole list of excuses, but you can expect, I would have thought, Dennis Lind to come charging through. That said, you've got to go down to, 25th after qualifying to find the first Lamborghini. So it's a brand perhaps this weekend that's on the back foot rather more than you might ordinarily expect.
Yeah, there you can see the lineup of the grid on the right-hand side. Fabrizio Crostani will be starting on pole position. Ben Barnicoat alongside him. So both McLarens, or two McLarens on the front row of the grid, two Porsches on the second row of the grid. Then we've got an Aston Martin, then a Bentley, then a Mercedes. The first Audi is in 9th position. And once again, the amount of, let's not forget, the Assetto Corsa Competizione is the official game of the SRO GT World Challenge. And this, amazing grid of cars is based on real life, David.
Indeed. So you've got the Pirelli tyre data, you've got the balance of performance that comes from the championship itself. So it's as close to the real thing as you can get. And that's why I think it's delivered such good racing that we saw at Monza, and why so many people want to be involved. We talked, Jack, didn't we, about 49 drivers doing qualifying. And that's been whittled down in both Pro and Silver. From the initial entry list, people had to do effectively pre-qualifying even to get this far. And there are some big names from other categories that haven't got this far. So you really have got the best of the best here going head to head.
Yep, further down you can see David Fumanelli down there in 39th place, a front runner in various classes. I think he was a Silver Cup champion a few years ago, wasn't he, in the sprint category? So yeah, not long now until the start of the race. The way it's going to work timing wise is the pro race will be getting underway any moment now. That'll be 1 hour long. Then there'll be a 15-minute break where we'll speak to the winner and have a bit of reaction. And then at 3:15 European time, which is 2:15 in the UK, we will be getting underway with the silver race, which is for the invited sim racers. And Niels Noyox is the man who's taken pole position for that race, who you may remember was involved in a controversial battle for the lead in the SRO Charity Challenge at Monza. So very much a front runner, and not a huge surprise to see Niels taking that pole position. So that's the way it's going to work, and then we'll be going off air in sort of 2.5 hours time roughly after we've had both of those races. Now Silverstone, the tyre wear, as you say, is going to be different because it was very much a slipstreaming race at Monza, wasn't it? Silverstone is good for overtaking, David, but not quite in the same way as Monza.
Yeah, you're right. There are places where you can do it, and there are places where you can force a mistake out of people. So at the end of Vale, going down into the left at the end of Vale, then right, the long right of Club Corner, heading up past the wing, that is a place where you can force an issue, if you like. You can force a mistake out of the guy ahead and try and get the pass done as a consequence of that. And then down into the stadium, heading underneath the vehicle bridge, down Wellington Straight, left into Brooklands. That's another opportunity for doing some overtaking. It's a fast circuit. It's one the drivers love. You've got some really good, brave bits like the Beckett's S's. So it's a place the drivers enjoy, and I think given that we are in for a 1 hour sprint and you don't have pit stop strategy, they're going to have to find places to overtake this time, Jack. They're going to have to get out their elbows and be a bit more forceful about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was quite clean actually, the racing that we saw in the first race at Monza. Obviously there was a bit of a controversial collision for the race win, but apart from that, it was like, for you, it was like watching a real motor race because it was your first little dip of the toe into the sim world. I think we've got John Watson with us as well, 5-time Grand Prix winner and of course co-commentator with David on the racing that we're about to see. John, how have you been finding all this sim racing stuff? Did you enjoy Monza first of all, I suppose?
Always loved Monza. Wonderful circuit, wonderful location, all the things I discussed when I was waiting to come on air in Monza. Just come back from a late lunch because there was nothing for me to do in the initial opening of this. You're all very busy explaining Silverstone, but of course what nobody can explain is what a ex-racing driver understands, and that is Silverstone is not Monza. And the reason is Monza is about straights and big braking areas. You've got a couple of quick corners, whereas Silverstone is a high-speed circuit, has a higher speed circuit than Monza actually is, and therefore you've got a different kind of flow and blend. So maybe the results that we had from Monza will not equate. And thinking about some of the sim drivers competing as opposed to the pro drivers, I would have thought the nature of Silverstone in a sim car might favour those drivers a little bit more because they understand what flow is all about. It's difficult doing it if you're accustomed to sitting only in a simulator doing it on the screen. But when you take those guys that have been pro drivers out of their pro cars into the simulator, I think they've got a small advantage over the sim racers. Now, that's something will remain to be seen in this, certainly a 1 hour event coming up. The other factor is we've heard about tyre degradation. Left front, left side is going to be hammered because it's a predominantly right circuit. But there's so many drivers out of place. Andrea Caldarelli, I mean, what is he doing down in 43rd position? Sorry, he's in a Lamborghini. Charles Leclerc in a GT car for the first time, in my understanding, in a sim event. I would expect to see him very quickly making progress up through the field. The guy is a genius. He's the most talented youngster. I know the fans of Max Verstappen would disagree with that, but who gives a you-know-what? The fact is Charles Leclerc is here in a Ferrari and Max Verstappen is back in Monte Carlo counting his money.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure he is. What did you make of the sim race in Monza, John?
Well, for me, it's all becoming a blur. The difference between sim racing and racing, the two are coming together almost to the point where if you switched on your laptop or your MacBook or watched it on your television and you walked into a room and you heard the commentary, all that's being put into this event, you would initially think, oh, what's this? I didn't know there's an event on, until the penny drops. It's a sim race. This blurring of the two elements coming together to such a point, very difficult to tell just at first glance.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just a couple of minutes away from the start of the first race. John, I just thought I'd get a little word from you on Riccardo Davila, who everyone's been discussing, obviously, the last couple of days. I mean, I heard you and him having some conversations that I'll never forget, to be honest.
Well, I've known Riccardo since the 70s. I mean, primarily, coming from Brazil and being very closely associated with the Fittipaldi brothers, the Fittipaldi family, and of course was heavily involved in that rather controversial move that Emerson Fittipaldi made at the end of 1975 to commit himself to becoming a Copa-Sucre driver along with his brother Wilson. And, what happens if and or buts? So Riccardo has been around for all those years, and I would see him from time to time, but more recently at SRO events and quite frequently at Spa 24 Hours. And I can tell you, he was one of the people I would enjoy walking up to and shaking hands and saying, "How are you, Riccardo? Haven't seen you for a while." And you would have a conversation, maybe a one-sided conversation, in fairness, but it'd be a great conversation. I was shocked when I found out yesterday he had passed away. I had no idea he hadn't been well. I think it was quite a short illness. Nevertheless, another great personality and character within the paddock and the family of motorsport, not just Formula One, but motorsport, has left us. Remember, just today, Sir Stirling Moss passed away, the most famous British name in motorsport and a global name. So it's a sad period right now for great people losing their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine there's many people, Watty, that you have one-sided conversations with where the one side isn't you. So that says something about Riccardo, doesn't it?
Jack, you saw my post the other day on that Instagram you put up. You got the facts there, didn't you?
I did get the facts. That's a different one. Okay, we can speak to Davide Buvio, who is from Assetto Corsa. Davide, thank you very much for joining us. How much are you looking forward to this new SRO Esports GT series we've got going on?
So much. Hi, all guys. Very happy to be here. And I think that for everyone at Kunos, but not only, we couldn't wait for a racing weekend. Finally.
Who?
Do carry on, Davide.
Yeah, so we couldn't wait for a racing weekend to come back again. Unfortunately, this time is virtual and not real, but we will enjoy this all together. We have lots of important guests. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Obviously, when all the sort of real-world racing has stopped, I guess the amount of people racing now on sim games is huge. Has that been a challenge for you, or coping with the demand that you now have?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only because obviously there's a macroeconomic growth of the gaming business that is going around due to the outbreak, but also because we obviously understand that people at home are starting to get kind of bored. And so when they want to sim race, they really want to sim race. So they want to have simulators the day after. They want to have the game running as fast as possible. And as you may know, a lot of big names come closer to the Assetto Corsa brand during the last weeks. So we had Valentino Rossi, Charles Leclerc, Pecco Bagnaia, Arthur Leclerc, Antonio Giovinazzi, and other big names that are now players of ACC. The demand has grown, while obviously we were already working on other tasks, so it's difficult to manage. But let's say that we are obviously not happy for the worldwide situation, but we are at least a bit happy that we can help people entertaining themselves.
It must be great for the brand to have these big drivers choosing ACC to race on. If these real world racers are saying, "Yeah, this is where I want to do my racing."
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Not just because they are coming to our brand. This is obviously important for us. I can't lie. The other important thing is that these guys are connecting with the community. At the end, Charles Leclerc and Valentino Rossi were live streaming together on Twitch. This is kind of crazy to think, and it's even crazier that they are very nice guy. So they just came here, started to race and practice. They were listening for our advices and from the comments from the community over Twitch and YouTube. So it really put up a connection between these popular guys and the guys that are playing at home every day. So this has been very cool to see.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much for joining us, David. I hope you enjoy the races today.
Oh, I will. I'm kind of sure. Thank you, guys.
Cool. Thank you, David. Good to hear from Davide there, and it is, you know, a testament to this series that such big names are coming to race in it. David, can you hear me? No, maybe not. Okay, we'll move on then. Ben, can you answer that question?
Yes, I can, Jack. It's fantastic, isn't it? Just unbelievable well, as a racing driver, we forget that these guys are programmed to be passionate about driving cars fast. You know, such is the professionalism of worldwide motorsport now. We sometimes forget they love this, and any opportunity to do this, whether it be virtually or real, now they really are chomping at the bit. The people like Jenson Button, as you well know, has been absolutely bossing the last couple of weeks on Saturdays, and great to see him here with his own team. For this year, McLaren, last year ran a Honda, and of course RJN, as you rightly said, previously Nissan for many, many years. We're just getting the grid set up now. We've had a little issue with the server, so we'll get the correct grid. Everyone will be in the correct positions, and we should racing very, very shortly. But I just love to see these guys. And when you're competing, and you have been competing, you jump into a session, and suddenly you're in a session full of Formula 3, Formula 2 drivers, GT drivers. Alex Buncombe appeared in one of our private races on Tuesday, just so he could get a little bit of extra experience. It's fantastic to see.
Yeah, I think you're right actually about the passion for it. You sort of forget, especially with a Formula 1 driver, that that they just sort of do their job and that's sort of it. But when this stops, they kind of rediscover the passion for all the different classes, it seems. Right. So, Watty, who are you calling for the race win here, do you think?
Well, just interesting, following on what you've just said, Jack, I'll get to your question in a minute.
Okay.
What actually for me is quite fascinating is something that used to occur decades ago.
Yeah.
And that was having Grand Prix drivers competing in other categories. And we're seeing Charles Leclerc, Jenson Button, the next Formula 1 driver, Via Tanto Liuzzi, they're coming into the sim racing. So I think it's great. Who's my money going to be on? Well, I don't know. You've got 0.4 of a second of an advantage in your McLaren. It's got to be a McLaren victory, I would have said.
Okay, so we've got Fabrizio Cristani on pole position. David, your thoughts? Who's going to take the win? We're going all around here.
Question. I am going to go Porsche. I'm going to go Louis Delatraz.
Okay, Constant Juris, you know the question.
Yeah, McLaren seems to have the edge, doesn't it? I wonder if Ben Barnicoat can make it to the end of the race without any issues.
Okay, so there we go. We're just a minute away from the start of the formation lap in the brand new SRO Esports GT series for the 2020 championship. The producer's shouting in my ear, who am I going for? I'm going to go for...
question as well.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go... Oh, who am I going to go for? Alex Buncombe. Alex Buncombe from 11th on the grid. I think he's going to storm through the field, and it's going to be amazing. So... there we go. Alex Buncombe is my money on. Actually, maybe Raffaele Marciello. I think he's got a chance.
Jack.
I'm going Buncombe. Look at that. We got the cars on the grid. They're about to start their formation lap for the first race in the SRO Esports GT series. This new 2020 championship. We've got 2 races coming up for you today. 2 one-hour races. The second coming up after this one is for the silver class, which is for invited sim racers. But first of all, we've got the real world racing drivers. Fabrizio Cristani on pole position. Charles Leclerc is in the grid. Jenson Button is in the grid, as well as a whole host of drivers we're used to seeing in the SRO GT World Challenge. So in the commentary box, we have got Ben Constanduros, 5-time Grand Prix winner John Watson, and of course the voice of GT racing, David Addison.
And so we look forward then to the first race. The cars making their way off the grid down towards Copse Corner. It is the heritage pits, if you like, in use. The old pits down near Copse Corner and coming out of Woodcote, rather than over at the wing, which is the traditional base, of course, this section of Silverstone for SRO and its GT categories. The cars making their way up towards the Beckett's S's then on this final formation lap for the rolling start. Fabrizio Crestani then in the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren on pole position. Ben Barnicoat's McLaren to line up alongside, and then Louis Delatraz, the House Formula 1 tester, for the second row, and another Porsche driver, Mathieu Cairoli, to line up alongside. 49 drivers in total have got themselves through the pre-qualifying into the race, and just, John Watson, look at this huge field of cars pouring up through the Beckett's S's. This is going to be something to enjoy.
David, I mean, spot the difference. Reality or sim racing. I mean, they look so good. The cars make their way now down onto Hangar Straight. It's a big field of cars. We've seen big field of cars when we've had the real deal going on at Silverstone last year for 50 plus entries. Always a problem with the congestion that you get coming up into the Beckett's complex. Then it spreads out a little bit further down Hangar Straight. Then the congestion going into Vale, and then you've got the last third of the lap, which brings you back through Woodcote Corner onto start-finish straight. We saw a great start at Monza, a clean start at a difficult circuit to get a clean start. I'm hoping we're going to see all the field get through this first lap without contact, and look forward to a cracking race.
Well, this is the section coming out of Stoke Corner down through Vale, at the end of which you could generate some overtaking. Jenson Button knows his way around here, of course. His British Grand Prix exploits were never hugely successful. It was the one that got away, but let's see what he can do in GT terms. Ben Constanduras here at the end of Vale. This, as we were saying a little while ago, is certainly somewhere that we can anticipate action, especially with so many cars.
Yeah, fast-flowing circuit, as John has been speaking about. Only a couple of really heavy braking zones, and this being one. It also just seems to attract trouble, doesn't it? I think it perhaps the left-right nature of it. If you do go down the inside on that left turn, you need to get it completely finished, because there is the opportunity to come back through the right. And that potentially is why we see so much chaos, both there and also at the end of the Wellington Straight into Brooklands. Again, it looks like it should be a simple overtake, but because we go through Luffield, again, you've got that left-right switch. You need to get the pass totally done before the circuit goes the opposite way.
And also, of course, the approach to Village. They've just been through that section, is another pinch point. Well, now the cars will be getting themselves into the Noah's Ark 2x2 formation, ready for the start. We lost a Porsche somewhere. Have we lost Mathieu Cairoli? Because he should be on the second row of the grid, and I've, to the eye, lost him. So this is where Ben goes and checks servers for us. But I think we've lost, have we not, Cairoli from the second row. The race director, Peter Roberts, brought in for this championship. Peter, vastly experienced race official from UK events, and more recently he's been part of the IGTC and SRO's man in America. But Peter, who is doing all this from Sandbach, I think about half an hour south of me, is in charge and looking at driving standards and the format of the race and making sure that everybody behaves. So, are we a Porsche down? It looks like it, Ben, doesn't it, from the second row of the grid?
Yeah, I can't seem to click on him, and his time on the server is no longer running. So I'll go into the race drivers chat that they have on Discord and find out exactly what's happened. They tend to come in and check in with the race direction there if they do have an issue.
Okay, I'll leave you to that. Thanks, Ben, because we're about to go racing then as the cars, having gone in front of the BRDC's virtual clubhouse, they come through Luffield and now through Woodcote Corner, speed building, ready for the start of our first round of the SRO Esport GT Series. Here from Silverstone then, on the front of the grid, Fabrizio Crestani and Ben Barnicoat. McLaren's both the deeper blue colours carried by Crestani. Ben Barnicoat almost up level to him then. In third slot on the grid, Louis Delatraz in the Porsche. If the officials are happy, we'll get the race underway now then, as everybody should storm their way down towards Copse Corner for the first time. But that, to me, looks like they're staying in grid order still, so it's not a quickened pace as yet. And now the speed does kick in as they approach the first corner, and round the outside goes Ben Barnicoat, so he takes over the race lead. There's already drama, I think, for Michael O'Brien being shown as having a drive-through, and Louis Delatraz has lost a spot to the leading Bentley there, I think, as they head up towards the Beckett's S's for the first time. So a good start by Jordan Pepper, and now the question is, does everybody get through safely? In midfield, I fear, there was a car on the grass there going through Beckett's. They come onto the Hangar Straight for the first time, and it is going to be McLaren's first and second then as the cars sprint down towards Stowe. John Watson, so far so good. They are just about keeping out of strife, although there is one on the grass in the background.
Yeah, Ben Barnicott got the advantage into Cops. Louis Delatraz looked like he was going to slip up the inside, but got slightly outmaneuvered. Charles Leclerc, brave man as he is, goes a long way around, and as he made that pass, he has. So already the young Ferrari Charger is charging in his Ferrari.
Getting on with the job to good effect, but right now, Ben, it's 3 for the lead, isn't it? 2 McLarens, and then what looks like being Jordan Pepper's Bentley trying to go with them, with the leading Porsche of Delatraz just dropping back a little.
Absolutely, and you mentioned Michael O'Brien with a DT beside his name. That means drive-through penalty. A very interesting system to get these cars underway. They all have to stay, as we see a bit of a pass there and a little bit of ghosting as they go into each other. They have to stay within a box, and if they go too far back or too far forward within that box before the green light, then they can pick up an instant drive-through penalty. And I think Michael O'Brien, having got a drive-through penalty before even we went to green, may have fallen foul of that.
Okay, that was Raffaele Marciello versus Luigi De Lorenzi. De Lorenzi in the yellow Aston has a look down the inside line coming into Brooklands, but to no avail. Raffaele, who has positioned himself as the Mercedes driver in recent years, hanging on to position then as they come up towards the end of lap 1. It was Ferrari that won here last year in a 3-hour endurance race. So at the end of lap 1, across the timing line, they will come. And is it going to be still up front then the McLaren of Ben Barnicott? Yes, it is. Crestani runs second. Third is Jordan Pepper. Fourth then is Delatraz. Fifth behind him is Marciello. And sixth is De Lorenzi. Michael O'Brien seventh, yet to serve his drive-through. Ben Tusting is doing a good job, eighth. Alex Buncombe is ninth. And then in 10th place, you've got the Audi, number 5 of Ivan Pereiras, as the cars now head up through the Beckett's S's for the second time. But everywhere you look at the moment, John, there's a battle going on other than those 3 leaders getting away, whisper it, getting away from a Porsche.
Well, what's interesting is me, Jordan Pepper, great start, joining into that battle for the lead, but further back, 2 positions further, 1 position further back, is the man that you always have got to keep your eyes on, Raffaele Marciello and the Mercedes. Waved yellow flag coming down into Stowe. And as we get a glimpse of the fact that McLaren leading the group just behind the Porsche is Jenson Button.
Indeed so, trying to find some progress as he comes to the end of Vale. He's also got them stacked up behind him. Charles Leclerc in the midst of all of that, having a look to try to get past number 25. That's Arthur Rougier. And as he comes out of Club Corner, number 62, Luca Giotto is right there as well. So Charles Leclerc goes to the outside line, gets to run over the curb and off the road and back on again. Elbows out, very different discipline, very different style of racing compared to Formula 1 this, but he's hanging on in there, he's attacking, he's defending. Rougier in the Audi has way wide, goes Leclerc, and there's contact, off he goes. He got back onto the road.
David coming out of Abbey, and he went from left to right at a very quick pace, and probably will take a little bit of time to get back on track, but that was a bump from the rear, and I think Leclerc wasn't aware, he was looking forward, not backwards at that point.
Well, let's see whether he survived it as the battle comes now down towards Brooklands. Again, look there, you've got Luigi De Lorenzi having a look to try to get past Raffaele Marciello, who in turn is inching up onto the back of the GPX Porsche of Louis Delatraz. His father, Jean-Denis Delatraz, was a mainstay of GT racing in the late 90s and noughties, having had his brief Formula 1 foray. But Louis Delatraz comes through, and he's hanging on for the moment to that 4th place. Now, what about Charles Leclerc? Did he survive? Where is he in all of this? He was on the fringes of the leading 16, and he's dropped a long, long way back. Dennis Lind only 22nd. Ben, Dennis not yet making the progress we were hoping from him.
I think it must be down to balance of performance when it comes to all the different marks of car. Lind is so good in this particular platform and sim racing in general. And unfortunately, side by side here is Charles Leclerc recovering. He's down in 26th position, and that was a compact that was parked on the outside there. Obviously had an off-track excursion. Leclerc's car doesn't look too badly damaged either, which is very lucky considering the contact he had at one of the fastest parts of the circuit.
Big problem, Ben, is that he went off the racetrack onto the newly mown grass here at Silverstone. Nevertheless, the splitter in the front of these cars will pick up anything, so he needs to be careful, particularly from potential rise in water temperature. Now, whether that applies in sim racing as it does in real-time racing, I do not know. The other thing is, Charles Leclerc, welcome to motor racing, where it is a bit of a hip and shoulder. It's not all this after you, Claude. He got a big push and shove coming into Abbey, and he's recovering. But Charles Leclerc down in he's just off my screen at the minute. Yes, he's just outside the top 23 at the minute.
it's probably the biggest grid that Charles has ever taken part in, really. If you go back even through Formula 3, the FIA European Championship days, that was 30 cars max. So here to have 49, it is a very crowded house indeed. Now, Ivan Pareras in the red Audi here, accelerating underneath the bridge down towards Brooklands. Sets the car up. We'll turn through in a moment, past the BRDC's building and up towards Luffield with a whole range of cars lined up behind him. But up front, Ben Barnicoat then, British driver, British brand, leads the way. In second place is Crestani, Jordan Pepper for Bentley third, Louis Delatraz for Porsche fourth, Raffaele Marciello Mercedes fifth, Luigi De Lorenzi for Aston Martin, another winning brand at Silverstone in the past, sixth. Then you've got number 644 of Ben Tusting, the Balf Motorsport run McLaren in seventh, Alex Buncombe is eighth, Pareras ninth, there he is, and then Romain Monti 10th. And right now, Ben, there's a whole real battle going on, interrupted though by that waved yellow at Beckett's.
Crucially, Michael O'Brien was in 7th position going into that lap. I'm not sure whether he went into the pits or whether he got booted out of the race for not taking his drive-through penalty. He only had one more lap to do it last time through. He is now in pit lane, but I think he may have been disqualified rather than just taking that drive-through penalty. A huge disappointment then for the man in 7th position going onto that lap.
He's just said on the chat, I was taken into the pits for no reason. My start position was correct. So there's a little disagreement, as there is in the real world, between officialdom and the drivers. Now, what about Delatraz here? Is the Porsche going to be able to fend off the challenge of Raffaele Marciello? The leading quintet, look, heading up towards us. And so the McLaren's almost as one, Bentley third. But Delatraz, if anything, John, would you agree with me on this, is getting perhaps a little bit closer again to the three ahead. The gap is not quite as big as it was.
It's a little bit of an ebb and flow, and it just may be getting accustomed to race conditions. I'd expect the Porsche to be right on the pace, but the issue mainly would be having Marciello behind you, because Delatraz has got to keep one eye on his mirror and keep looking with the other eye to try and catch forward as some of the other traffic makes its way through the loop.
Yeah, 333 Ferrari, David Pirelli, yeah, you're right. The redoubtable, the very enthusiastic Ferrari real world racer and sim racer, and he's got them all stacked up behind him, hasn't he? Look here, because you've got Ricky Collard having a good go. Luca Giotto is in all of this as well, and so is the Bentley, the Team Parker racing car of Scott Malvern.
Yeah, both coming into the two Aston Martins all over the back of David Pirelli and up the inside, and there's a position lost by one of the two Astons. That was a little bit loose. Is that Seb Morris just getting through?
I think that's Scott Malvern, isn't it, who's got through on the inside. So the Team Parker car goes through. Going back a story, we've seen Compank stranded up at Beckett's. I think he was involved with Brian Heitkotter looking at the race direction report, and way out wide goes Ricky Collard at Copse Corner. He's back on the road, but he's about to lose the place, because there, look, Scott Malvern out drags him.
Scott, yeah, just simply Ricky lost momentum as he went so wide off the racetrack at Copse, and Malvern was able to use that to his advantage. Clever thinking, good driving, clean driving by both drivers coming into one of the really challenging corners at Silverstone.
Indeed.
Had a couple of pit visitors, David. Nick Yellerly, Nicholas Hillbrand, Jody Fannin and James Poole, all with issues, and Andre Caldarelli is now in pit lane. So these will be for repairing contact potentially, or issues with their cars after the opening laps. Unfortunately, what's that, 4 or 5 drivers already with issues at the back of the field.
And more drama there, look, coming out of Club Corner, one on the grass. That's the Bentley number 10 of Romain Monti, and he wasn't alone in all of that. We've also seen, I think it was Alex Buncombe's car gaining and losing ground. Now, you're going to have Buncombe potentially here battling with Jenson Button. Of course,
Jensen's
good mates, aren't they?
Position away from Alex Buncombe.
Yeah.
Mess coming through Luffield. Jenson Button, well positioned to take advantage of it, has done so.
So Jensen going forwards, and it's Alex's brother Chris with whom Jensen is big mates, but the families know each other well. So here they come. Jenson Button getting himself up the order. 11th he is now, accelerating down towards us. Still Ben Barnicoat the race leader, but only by 0.3 of a second. And we've had, 10 minutes of the race then. This for the pro drivers as they come down through Brooklands. David Perel still under attack. Look, right there with him is Scott Malvern. And that Bentley, Ben, is going great guns, isn't it?
Absolutely. Great to see that the British Mark has had success at Silverstone before. Got a little bit sideways, bit of contact. More contact, oh dear.
Off goes Malvern. He got a bit of help from the Aston. I think it was Ricky Collard who got into the back of him. Collard now gets elbowed aside by the Ferrari there, coming over the timing line. So as they go through, that is Yefanov going by up into 18th place at the Ferrari. But the one that's come off worse, having just said how well he was going, Scott Malvern, that was all a bit messy, wasn't it, at Luffield?
Yeah, it was just too many cars into a limited amount of racetrack. But just watching the two Aston Martins going, again, Ricky Collard running very wide out of Copse. So those inter-team battles are as intense as in the field. And at the minute, we're seeing on lapping, timing and scoring that Jordan Pepper is in the lead of this race. What has happened to the two McLarens?
Well, that's a good question, because we've not seen anything, unless that's a server problem, but they've just both disappeared, haven't they? Are we aware of any penalties being looked at for them? No. So Barnicoat and Crestani all of a sudden disappear. The Giotto and Mulven incident is being looked at, so Giotto rather than Collard, to just clarify that situation. And right now you're riding with Marciello, who is all of a sudden third on the back of Louis Delatraz, and Jordan Pepper in the Bentley. Well, we've seen Bentleys winning at Silverstone in SRO events in the past. The Bentley is away and gone up the road, isn't it?
Yeah, but David, Ben Barnicoat is in 8th position and Crestani down in 15th. The reason for those two cars falling so far back, St. Morris in one of the other Bentleys, of course, in the 10th place. But we're riding with Marciello and the Mercedes in 3rd place, only half a second. The 2nd place Porsche, who's 2.4 seconds currently behind Jordan Pepper in the leading Bentley.
Yeah, the McLaren situation remains a puzzle for the moment. We'll try and unravel it, but Jordan Pepper leading, and while Delatraz is squabbling with here Marciello and Di Lorenzi, that means the race leader is getting away all the while, doesn't it? So it's looking good this so far for the South African driver, Jordan Pepper, who will go over the timing line, put another lap in the book in the K-Pax Racing by SRO Esports team, SRO Esports Emilio De Viotta's squad, and with 47 minutes and counting still to go, there, number 8 Bentley through Copse Corner is Alex Buncombe. Now, what about him in all of this? He is now 6th, making some progress forward again.
I tell you what, Alex
something
Buncombe
very, very key about
people in the car itself. I mean, driving absolutely wheel perfect. A lot of drivers have been watching way off race limits, off track limits. Buncombe doing a much better than the sporting context of what we're watching.
Ben, you were going to say?
One of the key things about this particular competition over many others that we're seeing in esports is this has open setups. So all these drivers have been working on the setup of their car for this particular race. And I know that Bentley have been working with their real engineers to try and get the best out of these Bentleys. And anybody representing Bentley has the opportunity and access to those engineers. So whilst Bentley and someone like Alex Buncombe was really struggling in Monza, they definitely have much better performance here. And interestingly, that Crestani shared his setup with Ben Barnicoat pre-race for qualifying to get themselves up in a better position. But it'll be a very different setup to make the car last for the full hour in this particular race.
And there you see Arthur Rougier going through on the inside to put himself up now past Arno Santomato in the Mercedes. So Rougier making some progress forward and accelerating his way now 12th onto Wellington Straight. The other thing that we were being told about was that for fuel, people might have to save a little bit for the first 15 minutes. We're almost at the end of that, and then they can go flat out. But you get the feeling this has been an absolute sprint race from the get-go for everybody involved, as Alex Buncombe there in number 8 Bentley, 6th, comes through. He's got the Audi tucked up behind him of Ivan Pareras. And then 8th, Ben Barnicoat. Now, other Ben Constanduras, have we yet got to the bottom of why the McLaren suddenly disappeared? Was that a penalty, do we know, or do we assume that they had a moment somewhere?
I wonder whether they had contact, so I don't have the ability to go back, so I can't see it. But another interesting thing, 20th position, Charles Leclerc,
yes.
ET alongside him. Sadly, he's been penalised for that lap 2 incident, and he will have to take a drive-through penalty. And if he misses that drive-through penalty, like Michael O'Brien did earlier, he will be booted out of this race. So fingers crossed he obeys the stewards, gets it done, and can get back out onto track.
20th Charles Leclerc, not a sentence one has to use very often, but there he is. He's still in the thick of it, but as you say, he will drop down once he serves that enforced penalty, the drive-through penalty. Right, we've got 45 minutes of this still to go, and up front it remains the charging Jordan Pepper in the Bentley. The rest of the field filing out of Stoke Corner, down through Vale. I'm tempting fate by saying this, but things now are just starting to calm down a little. Oh no, they're not. No, they're not.
Well, they look like they were at the point where you made your observation, but you get down and fail, it gets very congested. So I was having to run offline, get on the inside of the Vale, then it through clearways back onto what would be start finish straight for the Grand Prix, but this is not the Grand Prix, this is SRO Sim Racing. into Abbey, really challenging corner. A lot of curb on the inside. Careful, there's a nasty bump just as you begin to exit out of Abbey. Not affecting the GT cars as much as it does on the Formula that we'll be racing here shortly. Back full-time racing at Silverstone, we hope sometime soon.
Indeed so. Now that Lamborghini that we saw a little while ago being forced on towards the grass was that car number 60 of Dennis Lind. He was trying to find a way past Mikael Grenier, as at the end of Wellington Straight, Jenson Button is under attack. Look, because now the Bentley trying to find a way back ahead of him as they wriggle their way up towards Luffield. Number 10 is the car of Romain Monti. So Jenson Button trying to defend as they come through. Number 22 McLaren, Jenson Button over the timing line. Jordan Pepper 3 seconds to the good. It's not a massive advantage, but it is enough for the moment. 337 Ferrari, Maxime Yefanov, that is the fast tuning custom liveried car, and he's got himself now onto the back of Collard, Ricky Collard's Aston, as they dive down towards Copse Corner. Ricky Collard way up the curb on the inside, hangs onto the place, does he? Goes a little bit wide, John, coming out of the corner though.
Yeah, Ricky's been running wide almost every lap as he comes out of Copse, but he had to defend. Used a lot of curb on the inside again, up into Beckett's curb on the inside, then the cut back to the left to the Ferrari 337, putting pressure on Ricky Collard. Dennis Lind, of course, leading just ahead of slightly further down the road, in fact, from about, well, just a half a second or so ahead of Collard. So this little battle, and we've now got further down the field. Yelanov in the Ferrari 337, that's the car just diving around but being pursued by Leclerc. Where's Leclerc suddenly come from? He's doing something pretty amazing. He drops back. He's got to make his pit stop. I think he's going in now, I believe. Well, a little bit catching up. I think Leclerc has gone in on this lap. We saw him moving to the right, coming down into Vale, and currently now looking as if he's back in 20th position.
Yeah, he's going to have to serve this penalty soon, isn't he? Ben was making the point that you have a finite number of laps in which to take it, otherwise you get booted out of the race. We've got another McLaren in strife all over the grass. That's the Balfe car. So who is that dropping down the order? Ben Tusting, I think that was. So Ben Tusting, having gone well early on in the race, going off the circuit and falling down. You see he's now, what, 14th on that leaderboard. Alex Buncombe has dropped a long way back as well. News comes that the two McLarens, the Barnicoat Crestani cars we were asking questions about earlier, they did get themselves together. We don't have a replay of it, but that seems to be the story. There was contact between the pair, but they have survived it, so there'll be a certain amount of grumpiness between the two. So those McLarens that were really strong at the start of the race, now playing catch-up.
Raffaele, look, what are you doing, man? What are you doing?
Way out wide, loses a place. That is going to be De Lorenzi up into third place. Barnicoat, McLaren, the best of them, is sixth. He's still fighting. He's not given up yet. But, John, yes, explain. What was Raffaele doing? That wasn't like him.
Well, we know he's a great driver to watch. He's a fantastic race driver. That was just a little bit over aggressive on the turning into Copse. The back end stepped out, and of course, he had to make the correction, and the car will automatically run that much, maybe another 10, 12 feet too wide on the exit of Copse, which caused him to lose the position.
So he drops down to fourth. There, fifth is Ivan Pereiras. Now Ben Barnicoat is up behind him. Pereiras in the Audi here, doing a decent job, isn't he, in the Phoenix racing car. Is he going to be able to fend off Ben Barnicoat? You can guarantee, Ben Consti, that Barnicoat's going to be well fired up after his earlier dramas in this race. He's got 41 minutes just under in which to keep on pushing. How far up the order do you think he can get?
And he's not that far away. Jordan Pepper has a decent advantage at the head of the field, but then behind him, they're pretty close. I suppose, what is he, around... I do have the gap somewhere on the timing screen, can't see it at the moment, but it must be about 10 seconds off the lead. I think the McLarens generally have a decent pace. There's Jenson Button, and actually a question that came up on our YouTube feed on GT World, Jenson now in ninth. What is the little yellow dot beside his name? Everyone has one, some of them bigger than others. That means it talks about his connection. The larger the yellow line, the more on the edge his connection is, his internet connection. If his internet connection goes into the red, so the larger the line, it becomes more red, then he has the potential again to be booted out, because what you don't want is the cars around you, I'm sure Watty would agree with this, jumping about and not actually being represented as to where they really are on track. They can kind of ghost or rubber band out of the way. And if you don't know where the car is around you, then you can easily have accidents with objects you can't see. So that is why all of these drivers are monitored on their internet connection.
just watching this group of cars, 5 or 6 of them coming through into Beckett, the one of them that I'm impressed with most of all is in fact Grand Prix star and former world champion, but he is driving this race in his McLaren wheel perfectly. Every time he places the car at an apex, perfect. Every time he exits a corner, perfect. He is not doing, as Ben might be suggesting, getting carried away with the fact that you're in a sim race. He's driving this race as it is a real race, a live race. And he's about
Drive-through penalty for Louis Delatraz as well.
And the Bentley's almost just gotten past coming down into Vale, but can he recover enough, or can Jensen make the cut back? He's going to try and make the cut back, but he's probably lost the momentum as they come into the second part of Club Corner, and the Bentley has taken that position away to Jensen down to 10th and Rouget up into 9th.
And Crestani is being given a drive through as well for contact with Ben Barnicoat. So that also starts to explain why they dropped down the order, doesn't it? So the two McLarens made contact and Crestani is getting a penalty. Delatraz made contact with Crestani, and more drama there. Another rotating Porsche we see, which I think was Simone Iaquinta in the Ginzani Arco Motorsport car coming out of the loop. So the 911 goes around, but now we're starting to piece it together. So Delatraz second has a penalty, and the one that's creeping up the order nicely here is the Aston Martin of Luigi De Lorenzi. There it is. That's about to inherit second spot.
Aston looking good as a circuit, which suits the car in real life motor racing, as it does for the Bentley. Likewise, looking at 31, Seb Morris in his debut is I suppose you might say, a factory Bentley driver, having spent a lot of time with Team Parker.
Yeah, that's right. Another graduate from single-seater racing is Seb Morris, as you look here at this battle pack rounding Copse Corner. So Morris 7th, Jenson Button is 8th, Arthur Rougier running in 9th place.
I think timing and scoring is a little bit out because Jensen is 2 cars behind Rougier, but it seems to take a little bit of time to catch up.
And also there's Romain Monti's Bentley that we keep seeing, but that I think has lost a lap somewhere, so that's another slight quirk. However, coming down towards Stoke Corner, Ben Barnicoat up into now 4th place ahead of Pereiras, and Delatraz drops down the order. So is that because he's now served the penalty, or has he been taken out because he hasn't yet served it? Either way, Delatraz has just gone AWOL, so the order shuffles again. And Raffaele Marciello up into 3rd place, Ben Barnicoat 4th. They're going to be worth watching for sure, as out of Club Corner now comes number 5 Audi. Ivan Pereiras still being given a tough time here by Seb Morris.
And as a consequence of his drive-through penalty, Charles Leclerc is no longer featuring on page 1 of timing and scoring. In other words, he's 24th or lower.
Indeed so. Which
32nd, in fact, for Charles Leclerc. Just ahead of Vitantonio Liuzzi. There are 2 generations of Italian. Charles from Monte Carlo. But Tonio Liuzzi, world karting champion, 33rd, and great to have another ex-F1 driver in the field.
Yeah, I mean, every lap we find another name, don't we, that we've not yet talked about. There's Dan Wells, who was last in qualifying, but the Hong Kong-based Brit up to 20th, getting on with the job in his Lamborghini. Dan, much underrated driver. Delatraz now being shown as 18th then, after the drive-through penalty was applied. And Ben Barnicoat still striving to work his way forward. Now here, diving down towards Brooklands, number 76 is Ricky Collard. Michael Grenier behind him, graduate of Lamborghini Super Trofeo. The Canadian driver started in that a couple of years back and then came for the Emil Frey team into the Endurance Cup. And Ricky Collard is, I think, now being given a drive through. Yes, he is, for contact with Maxim Yefanov. So 35 minutes to go, and the order continues to shuffle with all of these penalties being applied. The race director is on his toes here, Ben, isn't he?
And what will be happening later on as well, if they do exceed track limits too much, there's kind of an additive effect on that. So you do it once or twice, you get kind of warnings. If you do it more than that, then penalty points start to apply. And if you do too much of that, then finally a 10, 15 or 20 second penalty will be applied as well. So we've got more of those happening as the race goes on. And I think we might have a flurry of drive-through penalties and slowdowns at the end of the race once people have driven too far off track at Copse.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. As down towards the end of Vale, there goes Ben Tusting's McLaren coming under attack from number 8 Bentley. That's the car in the hands of Alex Buncombe. So the McLaren through. That's 12th and 13th now. You're looking at the two British brands, but it's still Jordan Pepper's Bentley clearing the lead. He was 3 seconds to the good. He's now 4.4 seconds ahead of Luigi De Lorenzi's Aston Martin. Raffaele Marciello is still third. Ben Barnicoat's McLaren fourth. As contact into the back of Tustin goes Buncombe. Around goes the McLaren. Alex Buncombe continues, but John, thoughts on that? Was that just one of those things, or does Alex have a case to answer?
I think he may have a case to answer. It was an avoidable incident. It was a very, very minor touch, but it was enough. This is sim racing, not real-time racing, so I don't know the degree of, once you make contact, even it's the smallest of contact, is that sufficient to spin a car around? In real-time racing, probably wouldn't have been as disastrous in terms of the outcome as it appeared to be, but I suspect it'll be looked at and could be a penalty for Alex Buncombe in his debut for Bentley this season.
Indeed,
it's exactly what we saw in Monza as well, wasn't it? The lightest of touches unsettles the car and spins them round.
Yeah, what happened to Buncombe in Monza? We never saw him. It looked as if he didn't make the final field coming down on the start lap.
It was his internet, wasn't it, Ben, that crashed on him?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, lost contact. Well, he was in Cornwall, wasn't he? I think at the time.
Yes. Well, you know. Now, thanks, yes. The stewards are having a look at that incident, so we'll keep you posted, but you might anticipate more penalties to come. Yeah, they're having a look at it. So Jenson Button 7th, Arthur Rougier 8th is what is on screen at the moment. But Jordan Pepper is doing a very impressive job for Bentley up front, maintaining this gap down to the end of Vale. And Arthur Rougier staring at the back of the McLaren of Jenson Button. What is he going to be able to do before the end of the race? Well, Jenson would like to get himself into the top 6, but he's not quite close enough yet to the tail of Seb Morris, is he? As they run now up towards the very fast right flick of Abbey.
Well, what Jenson's doing is running almost metronomically. He's not putting a wheel wrong. He's driving absolutely beautifully, and he's allowing those around him to get balls or create penalties. He's currently in 6th place. With another 32 minutes of this race remaining, could he get into the top 3? Could it be a podium for Jenson in his first race in the Jenson Rocket RJN McLaren? I mean, I'm just mesmerised by the way that Jenson Button is driving, as opposed to some other competitors who are a lot more aggressive in the way they're tackling all these 18 turns at Silverstone.
Comes back to class, doesn't it? If you can drive, you can drive. Delatraz here is on the attack as he tries to find a way through the traffic. So that's the Kang Ling Mercedes that takes a big bite of curb on the outside, but Louis Delatraz goes through, takes the place on the inside line. Remember, he is trying to fight back after an earlier penalty. So Delatraz now is into 15th place. Keep out of trouble in this, you'll do pretty well, won't you, in terms of the final result? We're almost at the halfway point, but not quite yet.
And that is one of the key things about any sim racing online, is just stay out of trouble, be consistent, and by the end of the race, the result will come to you. And it is so easy to find yourself making contact with other drivers. There isn't the consistency you get in the real world of where those cars are on track. And for some reason, because there's a slight lack of senses, you do find yourself in many more issues than you would do in the real world. And so just staying out of trouble is the easiest way to get yourself a half decent position.
Absolutely right. There's a drive-through, if he's still in the race, heading the way of Andrea Caldarelli for contact early on in the race with JD Fannin. There, number 51 Ferrari on the attack. That is Daniel Serra, Chico Serra's son, the ex-Formula 1 racer, and heading down the Hanger Straight now towards Stoke Corner. Serra on the outside line. Is he going to be able to pull the move? He's going to have to be brave to do it. He does brake late. He gets into the corner fractionally ahead, but he's on the wrong outside, slower line. And so Al Khalifa in the McLaren there, the blue and black McLaren, just fends him off as they come down through Vale. But Daniel Serra attacking and under attack himself, as Jenson Button is still elbows out, trying to keep Arthur Rougier at bay now.
Yeah, all getting very tight coming down into Vale. I thought Daniel Serra was probably a little bit generous. He could have been a little bit more aggressive coming into Stowe and allowed Al Khalifa to get the McLaren back into position to take the ground away. So going further through the field, Rougier, Jenson Button, the lead of those 3 cars immediately on camera. Oh, wow, that was pretty rude, wasn't it?
It was, I'm afraid. Yes, around goes Al Khalifa. So that is a place gain for Serra. There is Matt Samuel in his Aston, accelerating on to Wellington Straight. He's just gained a place out of all of this as we get into the second half of the race now. Jordan Pepper's advantage is getting bigger and bigger all the time. Arno Santamato goes through, look back, and you've got Alex Buncombe behind him. So 11th and 12th, Mercedes versus Bentley here. And as they go through Copse Corner, Buncombe looks a fraction closer as the speed builds up towards Beckett's, John.
Yep, not much you can do. He's just a little bit too far behind, so prepare yourself. Go through the three corners. The final of the three leads onto Chapel Curve, and that then will bring you onto what is essentially the quickest part of Silverstone, Hanger Straight, though it's all slightly variable depending on the direction the wind is blowing. I don't know what direction the wind is blowing, other than hot air coming out of the commentary booth.
Buncombe goes through on the inside, heading into Stoke Corner, so that puts him up into 11th place. The next target is Simone Iaquinta's Porsche that had a spin earlier on in the race. So Alex Buncombe charging on to get himself further up the order, try to shadow what Jordan Pepper is doing in the lead of the race here. Marciello third, still not really being able to make the progress against De Lorenzi, is he, Ben?
No, absolutely not.
Ferrari, look.
Yeah, and Rougier and Button were in strife as well, coming out of Club. Rougier's all at sea there, isn't it? Sorry, not Club, that's at Abbey.
It's Abbey. Jensen again in 7th place. Seb Morris now managed to get past Pereira's up into 5th place. Button dropped, showing now back in 8th place behind David Pirelli and the Ferrari. So lots of action has gone on when we're watching one bit of the circuit. Lots of things going on elsewhere.
Yeah, David Pirelli, I think, got involved with Jensen Button because the officials are having a look at that to see if anybody were at fault. Now, Ben, sorry, you were halfway through a very important point. We got excited about spinners.
No, it's okay. Usually in a 1 hour race, we'd see in the sprint series of the World Challenge a pit stop. But to keep everything exciting in terms of managing fuel and tyres, we don't have pit stops in this race. So a lot of people on the chat asking about pit stops. No pit stops here, but very, very good battles.
Indeed, so for 8th there, Iaquinta loses out. Alex Buncombe goes through on the inside line, so Alex Buncombe gains a place, runs a little bit wide. Iaquinta comes back at him. Bentley versus Porsche, they almost rub, and now accelerate up through the Beckett's S's. So the Porsche loses out, the Bentley gets up into 8th place. And David Pirelli, as I say, did get involved with Jensen Button, so it might be that something comes of that in terms of a penalty. We'll keep you posted.
Good overtake by Alex Buncombe coming up into Beckett's, and again a professional driver driving, as Ben was explaining and I pointed out with Jensen Button. Just avoid contact, drive it as you would drive it if it was a real race. Just stay away from trouble.
Now Jensen is dropping down the order. Is he in the pits, Ben? I think he's been given a drive-through, hasn't he, for contact on lap 15. So Jensen is in trouble. The good drive looks like it's come to an end.
I haven't seen that come up on my screen for Jensen, but he is in pit lane, yeah.
Yes, he's just fallen off the top 20 order.
Yeah, exactly. So frustration for Jensen. So we're not done yet. And there, look, Alex Buncombe runs wide off the road and back on again. He's 8th, chasing after David Pirelli, but still lots of things can shake out of this race. Chris Froggatt being given a drive-through from very early on when he made contact with James Pull. I think Ben said that we lost James early on in this race. Right, this battle now to look at is Al Khalifa versus Daniel Serra, 22nd and 23rd. You're on board with the Ferrari now, John, heading up towards Village.
Yep, so this is a part of the racetrack where you can pass, particularly as you make that turn in through Village. It's a lot of options. Then you've got Loop, which is left. Some drivers come in early, some like to ride the high line. Then as you come through Aintree, which is a flat out curve to the left, but the McLaren has done a good job. It's just edging away once again from Daniel Serra as they come down Wellington Straight. And then the big braking before you turn into Brooklands Corner itself, you can see the gap has fractionally opened up. So Serra's marginally lost a little bit of time to
to Al Khalifa, I think.
Yeah, no, just behind Serra.
Sorry, Matt Samuel. Yeah,
Samuel.
That's right. And then you've got the recovering Lefanoff and Ricky Collard further back in that group as well as they come past the pits then now. So 25 minutes of the race still to go. Race leaders swing their way through Copse Corner. Rougier having fallen back down in 14th place now.
Al Khalifa isn't quite so convincing coming through Copse against Serra right up under the rear wing of the McLaren. So he'll be thinking about an opportunity on the exit through Chapel Curve and then plan when he tried to do one lap earlier. He can't get any closer. I mean, he's almost driving into the rack of the back of the McLaren. Coming now side by side, it's a battle of the turbo V8s, Ferrari and McLaren, down the hill into Stowe Corner. Serra this time on the inside has got him, but overruns on the exit. And Al Khalifa again does a good job. Serra loses 2 places. He's going to lose 3 places before we get into Vale.
He could well do. He's on the inside line. Round the outside goes Collard. Does he get his nose in front? Yes, he does. Does he go out wide? Possibly. And into the back of him goes Daniel Serra, and that's one way of getting a place back. That was pretty brutal. Right into the back of Ricky Collard's Aston. Just turned him out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, that was clearly an avoidable incident. So again, we wait to see what the race director, the stewards, will make of that. Is that a penalty? I suspect if Duncan was penalised, then I suspect it'll be the same. Unfortunately.
Well, straight away, Daniel Serra's number comes up on the channel for the stewards to say we're having a look at it. Well, what a surprise, because that was pretty brutal. And he, on that 17th lap, I think, yes, the incident will come back to bite him. Now, while all that's been going on, of course, up front, Jordan Pepper, Ben, 5 seconds clear of anybody else now, just getting on with the job, driving nicely and smoothly and not making any mistakes, is he?
Yeah, this is really now a bit of an endurance test for him, just banging in those consistent lap times, lap after lap. And he's doing a good job with it. He's within 2 or 3 tenths of a second of his lap each time he does this. And what a great reward for Bentley, that have put so much effort into the virtual world over the last couple of weeks. We saw them getting heavily behind the charity challenge that we had at Monza a few weeks ago. But now, PR director even organised a virtual photo shoot to promote this, and any driver that chooses the Bentley in the AM races that we have over the next couple of weeks will get PR support from Bentley. I love what they're doing.
Yeah, they've really embraced it, haven't they? It's great to see. Of course, Bentley, a good British brand. I know it's part of the Volkswagen Audi group, but still has its roots in Crewe, in Cheshire. And Silverstone was the venue for the Bentley Continental GT3's very first win, going back to the early days of its competition career, despite a drive-through penalty from memory that Guy Smith had to serve. But Stephen Kane brought home the car as a winner. And right now, Jordan Pepper leads the race here. There's 27 McLaren. That's Fabrizio Crestani, recovering after his earlier travails. He's down in 25th place at the moment. Further up the road there is the McLaren of Al Khalifa, Issa Al Khalifa, who still manages to fend off the traffic behind him. Delatraz, after his problems early on, is back up into 11th place. So still the order shuffles almost lap by lap as people either have problems or then get themselves in battles which go against them.
There was the man on pole position, back down in 25th place, Crestani. Ben Barnicoat in 4th, who the two McLaren somewhere, we didn't see them coming together, but Ben Barnicoat was the one who's come off the better of the two. As Crestani struggles to find progress. Daniel Serra, likewise, involved in an incident just a few moments ago, down in 24th place. So a lot of penalties, but they look minor contacts, but the consequences are very severe indeed.
Indeed so. I think more penalties are about to come from the officials as over the timing line they go. Luca Giotto is being given a drive-through for contact. And as I say, the Daniel Serra incident is being looked at as well. Looking back from Charles Leclerc's Ferrari, 27th in this yo-yo race. Whoops, gets all crossed up going through Copse Corner. Hang on to it, John.
Yeah, and I mean, a hugely talented young race driver, getting a bit of an eye-opener. I mean, it's one thing driving sim Grand Prix or single-seater races. You're aware that contact has got big consequences, but in GT racing you can have a bit of rubbing, a bit of hip and shoulder, and get away with it. But it's when you tag the back of another car. That tag I've seen today has, in relative terms, been so light, but it's sufficient to spin that car ahead of you around. And that's where we're coming from. It's not as if it's aggressive driving, it's just driving. But in sim terms, it's a much bigger penalty.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yes, so for Charles Leclerc, he's trying to regroup. There, in the meantime, Delatraz up into the top 10 now. He's got himself up past the Mercedes. You see Ivano Santamato, so Louis Delatraz in the Porsche in the colours that won the Spa 24 Hours last year, that did the bulk of the leading in the Carl Army 9 Hour, the GPX car. Comes down now, GPX Racing Porsche down towards Brooklyn. Simone Iaquenta is back ahead of Alex Buncombe. These two have been trading places, and don't forget that Porsche has had a spin as well over the course of this race. Coming now up through the right of Woodcote, heading towards the timing line.
Yeah, you can see just coming through Brooklyn, he got the back of the Porsche, stepping out. You don't really want to do that, particularly in a Porsche, with all the weight hanging out behind the rear wheels. Remember, this car is not a mid-engine GT car, it's a rear-engine GT car, but the Bentley clearly looks to have the pace, but also it's a much better balanced car as we watch them come through Beckett's.
That's right, so the gap widens, doesn't it? The Porsche just getting away a little, as here you've got Luigi De Lorenzi getting himself through the traffic. Now ignore the car immediately behind, you need to be looking for the Mercedes. Raffaele Marciello in third place. In the meantime here, Ivan Pereiras is keeping David Perel at bay. David is doing a very good job. We know he's good on a sim, but David Perel dives to the inside line. This is for sixth place, and he's done it at the end of Vale. Assuming he doesn't run wide into Club Corner, he'll be able to come out the other side with a place gained, and that, Ben, was a good move.
Rail's got huge experience and was a bit of a consultant when it came to Assetto Corsa Competizione. He's really knows this game inside out. So it's great to see that that performance is now coming to fruition. Of course, anybody running a Ferrari has the benefit of those very experienced Ferrari drivers that we'll see in the silver race coming up. Experienced sim drivers setting up those Ferraris to allow these drivers, these pro drivers, to get the best out of them. So one of the reasons why Charles Leclerc was attracted to coming and joining this race was because they had so much support from the Ferrari Esports Academy that run Enzo Benito and Luca Tonzia. Luca at the moment is leading the F1 Esports series, or sorry, won it last year.
Indeed so, and there you've just seen the Lorenzo Marcucci Audi squeeze through and gain a place coming out of a loop. That now means that he is up into 17th place. Dan Wells, the victim. Arthur Rougier, number 25, currently in 13th place now, coming towards the completion of the lap. So, just under 18 minutes to go. Jordan Pepper, lap by lap, creeps away from the rest. Number 66, Bentley, is Scott Malvern trying to get himself up past the Matt Samuel Aston Martin. Others have gone way wide off the road and back on again. So, this quartet dives down to the end of Wellington Straight. Can Scott Malvern force the issue in the Bentley? Not quite. The Aston cuts across and defends. McLaren goes wide. That's Al Khalifa in strife, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, Charles Leclerc slips up cleanly and relatively. Was that Daniel Serra or Leclerc? Let's see, of the two Ferraris it was. But certainly a mistake by Al Khalifa and the McLaren at Brooklands, causing him to lose momentum as well as losing paces.
Somebody who's been having a few mistakes, a few over the last couple of laps, Raffaele Marciello has been having a messy couple of laps, but now he's got his head down and he's catching Luigi De Lorenzo. So the gap is down to 0.6 of a second. I think that was that Dennis Lind going off the circuit in the Lamborghini? But look out for the battle for second. It's going to get really spicy very, very soon.
Okay, there was mayhem at Copse, as you saw. There's mayhem at the Beckett's S's there as Scott Malvern comes to grief, I fear, with Ricky Collard, whose Aston Martin is off and back on again. But yes, there were cars all over the place at Copse Corner, so it's getting scrappy, John.
Yeah, I mean, just watching up at Beckett's, Ricky's been off the racetrack. I can't believe how many times he's been off this afternoon, and that was probably the biggest example of them all. But listen, hey, the guy's having fun. Is it his first sim race? Whatever it is, he's enjoying it.
Very true, very true. Charles Leclerc, just to finish off one story, up into 22nd place. Davide Fumanelli now, he's getting a drive-through for contact from earlier on in the race. So the stewards are busy looking at everything on replay, and if you've transgressed, then you will be found out. This is for second and third, backing up what Ben Constantiouris was saying about the pace of Raffaele Marciello then. He's only 0.4 of a second away from Luigi De Lorenzo as they come now up towards the Beckett's S's. So De Lorenzo hangs on to second, but only just. Marciello, there he is in third place, charging, coming out of the Beckett's S's now, John, heading towards the grunt and go section that should help the Mercedes.
Typical Raffaele Marciello uses every bit of the racetrack and bits that aren't really racetrack in his efforts to run the Aston Martin down. The gap, well, it's what, 0.6 of a second, probably a little bit less as they come down into Stowe. 15 minutes of this race remaining. Raffaele will have the lasers on the back of that Aston Martin, and they'll be with anchor hook out to try and hold it back in as they come down into the braking down into Vale. Slow in, get your car positioned for the first part of club, then use the steering and the throttle in conjunction to allow the car to make the second part of the club, make it in effect a one apex corner, although it will be two separate ones, but it's one big continuous arc.
That's right. So as the cars there go through Stoke Corner, Arthur Rougier 12 with Ben Tusting behind, and through Vale, the BMW there getting out of the way. We haven't seen very much of BMW's involvement in this. JD Fannin, one of the BMW drivers, was involved in incidents early on. So Jordan Pepper continues to lead the way. We've got just over 14.5 minutes of the race still to go. Jordan Pepper is 6.4 seconds up the road. Now, we are into the part of the race where we are told by the experts of this that if your tyres are going to go off, they'll now be going off, and the tyre degradation can be anything up to 3 seconds a lap. So if people suddenly start to look really slow and be struggling, then that could well be down to tyre wear, having pushed them too hard too early in the race. And we'll start to see now whether, for example, Jordan Pepper, because of the drive he's had here, has been able to look after the tyres in this race.
Listen, we're seeing that now on the timing screens. Almost every single driver is only within about half second to a second of their best lap. So we are seeing that degradation play out. Some people are doing it better than others, but even the leaders are losing a second lap to how they've ridden before.
I think in the case of Jordan Pepper leading this race, first of all, he's had a clear racetrack virtually up until this moment, 13.5 minutes to go, to compromise any of his driving style, the car as a consequence. Secondly, the Bentley, we know, is a car, I call it very light in its toes. It's a car that does not overuse or more abuse its tyres. Some other cars in the field, because of the nature of the setup, the camber angles they run, sometimes the toe angles they have to put into the car to get it to bite and grip, Bentley doesn't need to do that. It's a great chassis.
Certainly working well here, isn't it? But then the Mercedes, and Raffaele Marciello has proved to be the real master of Mercedes over the years. He is still hunting down Luigi De Lorenzo, and De Lorenzo has done a very good job in all of this, has he not? Because he's up against more successful, more experienced drivers, and he's driven very well, kept out of trouble, and there he is in second place.
And also, David, he's actually taken a little bit of time out of the lead by about half a second there.
Yeah.
I'll be for getting tagged yet again up at Beckett. See, I wonder, feel a bit like a punch bowl, punch board or countersunk. I don't know which of the two it is. But anyway, up at Beckett's, unfortunate, as we see Melvin in the Bentley and being pursued by Molina. Well, it was Molina, I'm not sure it is now. There's Jenson Button back at the races, a man who I said was outstanding in his debut in GT racing. He's outstanding in wherever he's doing off-road racing in the Baja Peninsula in California, sim racing, single-seaters. He's given up racing single-seaters, actually. Wonder why.
Much more fun in this. But you're right, 34th, back in the race, trying to recover. And the pit stop was for some damage, we understand. So it's good that he's circulating once again. And also, as the cars come down towards Brooklands, the gap second to third down fractionally. Also, as we've been saying, the second place driver Luigi De Lorenzo is had been closing a little bit on Jordan Pepper, but now that gap has stretched out once more, which is a frustration for the Aston Martin driver. 11.5 minutes to go. There is Louis Delatraz going through, running now in 9th spot. Can he improve on that before the very end?
Also, keep an eye on Ben Barnacle. He has now closed down just with over half a second on third place Raffaele Marciello, who has dropped about a second on second place De Lorenzo. So how did he lose time? Did he make an error? Ben Barnacle's closing down, and he's losing, that's Marciello, losing ground, certainly on timing and scoring, to that of the second place De Lorenzo and the Aston Martin.
So just under 11 minutes of the race to go. Marciello turns now through the fast sweeping Abbey, and Ben Barnicoat is getting closer to him. So if anything, it's going to be battle on for third rather than second, isn't it? Marciello has fallen too far back to attack.
Correct.
Ben Barnicoat for the podium. Could be on here, John.
Yep, absolutely. So Ben Barnicoat got the momentum. The gap now, just as it came across the line at the end of the last lap, has halved to just over 0.3 of a second. So Ben Barnicoat is the man. You see him there on the charge. Comes up, gets alongside, down into Brooklands. Well, he's done it. And Raffaele Marciello had no answer. Nothing he could do. Barnacle has got the pace, he's got the grip. Now Marciello tried to come back a little bit in the middle of Luffield. Not a good place to do it. Make contact, that will be a bigger penalty than it's just the time he has lost. but he's lost position out of the top 3 into 4th place.
It's a good effort, wasn't it? That good move. So Ben Barnicoat, who was fighting for a race win at the very start, contact with another McLaren, finding himself on the back foot. Well, with just under 10 minutes to go, he's up into 3rd place, 1.8 seconds back from Di Lorenzo. He might, Ben, get there before the end. There's certainly time left for Barnicoat to take 2nd place, isn't there?
Yeah, has he managed to preserve his tyres, even though he's had to push after that early incident? He does seem to have the grip, whilst others don't. We're looking at the likes of Delatraz really struggling. Big slide there from Buncombe. Buncombe struggling too. He was 2 seconds a lap slower on that last lap. Behind him, Delatraz was the same, but perhaps because he's being held up, now flashing his lights through Maggots and Beckett's. But Marcello, I think, has just run out of tyres, having pushed so hard to get onto the tail of Di Lorenzo.
Now, what about Di Lorenzo's tyres? What about Ben Barnicoat's tyres? I mean, Ben has been charging back up the order. You'd have thought
he was within 0.3 of a second. Oh, that was on Marcello. So he's now 1.7 seconds behind Di Lorenzo. That battle for 3rd place or 2nd place, sort of holding positions. We go back to Louis Delatraz, who currently is in 9th position, just half a second behind. There's the Bentley. You can see that's the gap, and you can see it on the road on timing and scoring. It's just half a second.
But what about Ben Barnicoat's tyres? Because he's had to fight his way back up the order. Therefore, he has been asking a lot out of the rubber, and he's not done yet, closing on Di Lorenzo. Through goes Delatraz, 9th, hunting down Alex Buncombe, who had that big slide at Copse at the start of the lap. Down through Abbey, they turn now then. 8.5 minutes are on the clock. We're on lap 26. And still, plenty can shuffle out of this race. Arthur Rougier, we've seen in the thick of it, and he's about to go 10th on the inside of Arno Santamato, diving down towards Village. Does he overdo it? Yes, he does. Runs wide up the curb. Still got the inside line for the loop, and just hangs on to the place.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the sort of unusual aspects of Village Corner. You can be all over the racetrack and still retain your position. And he just about got away with that. Santamato wasn't maybe sharp enough with his toes to read it more clearly. Anyway, as they come up to the end of what will be lap 27.
That's right. So for Jordan Pepper, the gap going up and up and up, 7.4 seconds. Rougier, Santamato, and then Ben Tusting. Now Ben, whose experience largely has been in historic single-seaters before coming to GT racing, doing a really good job here. He's been up and down the order a little. Mick Grenier is being given a drive-through now, incidentally, for contact against Lorenzo Marcucci from earlier on in the race. 7.5 minutes and counting. So, Ben, prediction. Di Lorenzo for 2nd, or is Ben Barnicoat going to get the job done?
Ben Barnicoat's so close now. Look on the screen. Down the hanger straight, he was getting closer and closer. Couldn't do it into Stowe, but later on the brakes into Vale, and that almost looked easy from Ben Barnicoat. The McLaren working incredibly well at the end of this race. Lorenzi losing a 2nd on this lap. He lost a 2nd on the last lap as well. I think he has done his tyres.
Yeah, that was a well-executed move by Ben Barnicoat. He knew where he had the advantage. He waited until he got that advantage, made it stick, got up in the 2nd place, but he's got a massive 7.5 seconds disadvantage or deficit between now that 2nd place and race leader, and totally, virtually, well, all virtually, if not totally unchallenged, from the minute this race got underway. Jordan Pepper, 7.5 or 7.6 seconds of an advantage over 2nd place Ben Barnicoat.
Yeah, unless Jordan makes a mistake, it's hard to see Ben getting much closer to him. But we know that Ben is a real style driver in GT3 or GT4 McLarens. We've seen that a lot over the last few years. A great fan of Formula One, except Formula One stock cars. And he's tried his hand at that and won races in it in the past. So another versatile driver is Ben Barnicoat. Wide out of left field, up towards the completion of the lap. Let's just see what the gap is going to be now that he's up into 2nd place, and whether there's a chance of bringing that gap down significantly in 6 minutes, 7 seconds. No, too tall an order, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, a big ask for Ben Barnicoat to take a 7-second deficit in, 5 minutes. I mean, anything is possible. The thing that may also come into play, we haven't seen very much of Jordan Pepper having to deal with traffic because he hasn't had any around him. But if he does get into some of the back markers and they aren't aware of a quicker car, the race leader coming through, that can be enough in itself to give Jordan Pepper the problem that he doesn't really need with just 5.5 minutes remaining.
So Jordan Pepper has had to go past 2 cars, Al Khalifa and another. He's just had to lap those 2, and he lost a 2nd in doing so because he caught them at Maggots and Beckett's. That's a 2nd in only half a lap. He's still got the other half a lap to do.
A big drama at Club Corner. So Jordan Pepper, yes, as you say,
Ignore that image. Ignore it.
being caught by Ben Barnicoat, and the connection will be restored in a moment. Is going to be positioned on the left-hand side, up then towards the British Racing Drivers Club farm. He flicked through Abbey and then farm corner itself here, the left-hander. Meantime, up towards the end of the lap, there's 333 David Pirelli running, what now, in 5th place. It's been another really good effort by him, getting himself all the way through the pack and here into the top 5 now.
Yeah, there's been the South African clear road ahead of him, so he can do a little bit of good work. I mean, he's 8.5 seconds behind Raffaele Marciello in 4th place, so probably not much more he can manage. The gap between 1st and 2nd is down to 5.8 seconds with 3.5 minutes remaining. So Ben Barnicoat has not given up any hope of taking victory, but in reality, it's going to be a big, unlikely event.
Still the battle on between Buncombe and Delatraz for 8th position here. A battle that's lasted the last couple of laps, but still running really well, and Buncombe holding on. Really struggled with Assetto Corsa Competizione when he was first given it a couple of weeks ago, but now has got the grips of it, found the setup in the car, so vital to get the car set up properly like it is in real life. This probably is the closest to real life you can get of any simulation software that we have available to you. Assetto Competizione, the newest simulation software, and therefore the most beautiful, but probably also the most realistic as well. Traffic for De Lorenzi.
I mean, we've got De Lorenzo and Marciello. Traffic getting in the way, stepping aside in finish. Now Marciello looks to go up the inside, manages to avoid the back of the Aston Martin. Had he tagged it, he would have spun it, and that would have been a penalty for Marciello with just 2.5 minutes remaining. That's
right. So De Lorenzo hangs on to the place. Marciello then is 4th. David Pirelli 5th as the cars accelerate once more down now towards Brooklands. Seb Morris doing a good job. Let's not ignore Seb for Bentley because he's 6th. Ivan Pereira 7th in the Audi. 8th Alex Buncombe's Bentley. 9th after a drive-through. Remember, Louis Delatraz, and 10th is the Audi of Arthur Rougier. So some of the drivers that were in strife either through a spin or a penalty early on in the race have been able to fight back in many terms. 2 minutes and counting. Marciello goes over the line, so he's off the notional podium, and he's running 4th as they dive into Copse Corner once more. But the Mercedes is all over the back of the Aston Martin. We're going to be able to squeeze one more lap out of it at the end of this, I would offer you. I would have thought that Raffaele Marciello has got everything fine-tuned as best you could possibly do in a Mercedes AMG GT3 to find a way past the Aston Martin. We saw Ben Barnicoat did it. Well thought out and executed pass on the Aston a couple of laps ago. Marciello maybe has seen some inspiration, and maybe he's got a little bit of life left yet in those tyres on his Mercedes to make a move. Not into Stowe, not close enough. Think about it, down into Vale. He's holding a tighter line, got a better exit speed. Now he's going to make a move. Goes to the right, but has to think about it. Goes maybe down to the left, dives down. It's the back of the Aston Martin. Can he make it stick? Well, will that be penalised, or will that be a racing incident that runs very wide on the exit, and all of a sudden it's getting very messy with these cars battling for 2nd and 3rd place? Absolutely. So Raffaele Marciello goes through up into 3rd, but will it stand? Question mark, because John posed the question. There was contact, you saw it, so it'll be looked at by the officials. But either way, for the moment at least, Marciello is ahead. Romain Monti there in the Bentley, which is not featuring in the timing, but it's still in the race, driving at the same pace. So either he lost a lap early on, or there's something quirky about him in the timing, because the car we've seen in the race, but it's never really featured in the classification. He's now got himself up past De Lorenzo as well. But Raffaele Marciello trying to pull clear as they accelerate down once more towards Brooklands. 20 seconds are on the clock. Jordan Pepper should be able to squeeze by. Marciello is indeed being looked at by race control for that bit of contact we've just seen, so it was brutal. And the officials are going to have a look as we get into the last 8 seconds of the race. The leader has gone by, so Jordan Pepper has got one more lap to go up towards the Beckett's S's. And this, guys, has been a very impressive drive by Jordan, hasn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, a supreme drive by the South African. Has not put a wheel wrong, and he got himself into position in the lead and just has driven away from the field. And he's been able to control his pace by running at the pace of this nearest challenger, whoever it's been. Right now it's Ben Barnacle. Gap is between those first and second cars. Well, it was around 6.1 seconds, waiting to see what it will be when they come across the line at the end of lap 31.
Well, for Jordan Pepper, yep, the gap 6.6 in the sectors. He's going to be home and dry. He's going to take the win, that's for sure. But as they come now down through the end of Vale into Club Corner, it's going to be a British brand to win on a British circuit. Here up towards the exit of Club, towards Abbey, comes Jordan Pepper. Ben Barnicoat is still charging up into third, much yellow, but it's not guaranteed that Raffaelli is going to hang on to that place. You can see more penalties being offered up on the information line on the screen. You've got Simone Agquinta now with a drive-through, number 38 Porsche for contact. But Ben Constanduras, Jordan Pepper deserves all the plaudits for this. It's been a really impressive drive.
Yeah, we didn't really see how he got to that position, but once he did, he ran the best pace he possibly could and really flown the flag for Bentley around Silverstone circuit. Fantastic to see, of course. By taking this victory, he will take some success ballast and BOP into the next rounds, which will slow down his Bentley, but still further back. Romain Monti's running at the pace of these leaders, and the problem is he's faster than Marcello right now, but he is in 27th and a lap down, so he's getting himself really in the way here.
That's right, so it's going to be a win then for Jordan Pepper, who comes across the line then at the end of 31 laps of racing to take the win here at Silverstone in the first round of the SRO Esport GT Championship. And for second place, Ben Barnicoat goes across the line. Third on the road is going to be Raffaele Marciello, but watch this space. Fourth will be Luigi Di Lorenzo, David Pirelli fifth, and Seb Morris, good drive by Seb, to be in sixth place as the cars come pouring over the line. But plenty of drama, plenty of action, plenty of unhappy drivers, I would have thought as well, if they were involved in some of those incidents. We're not done yet. That's the order for many as they started the last lap of the race, but still they fight their way towards the line. Alex Buncombe there just keeping Louis Delatraz at bay, 8th and 9th, as those two came across the timing line. So drama all the way through the race, all the way through the field. I think probably the only driver that isn't aware of just how dramatic it was would have been Jordan Pepper, because he did not put a wheel wrong in that.
And David, I think Jordan Pepper, the first thing he's going to do when he gets up to his Bentley is go along to Ben Barnacle, shake his hand. You'll have to look for Crestoni, he's somewhere down the field, and say, thank you guys, you allowed me to win this race because you two, whatevers, drove each other off the road. You know, it's not rocket science going motor racing, whether it's real life or sim, just avoid contact.
Well, indeed so. Jordan Pepper it is then, who comes home victorious, and just, of course, with one more race still to come from here. Raffaele Marciello in the chat room saying he's sorry. Sorry for the contact. It was a bit laggy and he moved a bit. Apologies. So one or two drivers are trying to get themselves out of trouble on the chat room by putting their apologies in. Whether that's going to wash, we'll wait and see. So, a great first race here at Silverstone. Jordan Pepper victorious. And, of course, we've got another race to come, which is for the Sim Racing Stars, the Silver Championship. That is coming up as we can reflect on a great hour for the pros.
Well, what a great race in the SRO Esports GT Series. The first round of the 2020 Championship, where we've had the race at Silverstone. We're going to be moving on to Spa, Nürburgring, Barcelona, and another round, which will be voted on by you guys. And the win going to Jordan Pepper. And now the lead of the championship, with Ben Barnicoat in second and Rafa Marciello completing the top three, using the old lag excuse, which is fairly common in sim racing, and you never really know whether someone's telling the truth or not with that lag. But yeah, that was Ben Barnicoat, Raffaele Marciello's reasoning. But all disappearing for McLaren after looking so strong in the early stages. Collision between Barnicoat and Cristani knocked them out of the running, but Ben Barnicoat's pace was super impressive. David, I think that, you know, Barnicoat had his moments in that race, no doubt about it, all sorts of things going on, but the fundamentals are, he looked like the quickest driver out there. Oh, no, David. Ben, are you there?
Well, I'm here, Jack.
Oh, go on, Watty.
I'm always here, as you well know, Jack. The thing that Jordan Pepper didn't have to do was once the lead was given to him by the two McLarens getting together, he was just able to run at a pace which didn't put pressure on himself. We don't know, in truth, what he was capable of doing had he been under pressure. Yeah,
that's very true. Were you impressed with Barnicoat's drive back through the field?
Always. I mean, Ben Barnicoat's one of those unsung heroes of British motorsport, and he's done a blinding job here this afternoon. Again, conserved the car, drove cleanly in the incident when they were both in the two McLarens were leading. But aside from that, he didn't put a wheel wrong, and he had enough car under him when it came to the end of the race to put pressure and force that position to get into second position. He just needed another 10 or maybe 12 minutes to maybe run down Jordan Pepper, but it was a nip and an under a butt.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Raffaele Marciello, what did you make of that move? Obviously, it was robust, a bit of contact. Would you, if you were the stewards, which, you know, I know you'd love to be, would you penalise him for that, or is that a racing incident?
I would have thought that it was pretty much in a straight line. It was under braking, marginal. It did cause the Aston to go a little bit wide in Vale. I would think it's a 50. That one to the steward. See it again. The stewards have got every opportunity to look at it again before they would make their decision. And on this occasion, Jack, I will not put my you-know-what on the block.
Wow, okay. There's a first for everything.
Today's the day.
Don't be mean to me. Don't be mean to me.
I'm not being mean to you. I'm not being mean to you. David, what did you make of that first race then? I was saying that Barnicoat looks like the man to beat in this championship, surely, even though Pepper's got the win and the top of the points.
It's kind of a race of two halves, wasn't it? You had all the frantic silliness at the start with quite a lot of contact and people treating it as a two-lap sprint, and then it started to calm down a little bit, and you could then see, and John made the point, people driving professionally and their class showing through. So it was very enjoyable. It kept us on our toes all the way. Jordan Pepper was a deserving winner. Ben Barnicoat, I think, can count himself unlucky that he had that contact with Cristani that did for his race early on.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben Constanduras, let's have a little word with you because we're moving now to the silver grid. We've got Nils Noyux on pole position, the Dutchman who performed so strongly in the SRO Charity Challenge. Yura Petrochenko alongside him on the front row of the grid, the Russian. Then Patrick Selva, the Italian, is third on the grid. Arthur Camara, the German, fourth on the grid. And then David Tonitza, the F1 esports reigning champion, is fifth on the grid in his Ferrari. So this is where we see, you know, we don't call them the pros, we call them the silvers. But as far as sim racing goes, these are the top guys in the world.
Exactly, Jack. They're going to be so much more used to the things that happen in sim racing that don't necessarily happen in the real world, such as this kind of ghosting and cars jumping all over the place that kind of puts real world drivers off a little bit. The pro sim drivers, the silver drivers in this case, do kind of make allowances for that. There's a couple of curiosities in the entry lists, such as Will Triggerther, who's obviously racing in British GT this year, but he's considered a sim racer, and all of these drivers, all 47 of them, have been invited by the organising committee to take part in this. So even the likes of David Greco, who I know was a bit of a legend when you were racing sim back in the old days, and me as well. Great to see him qualified only 28th. Such is the competitive nature of this field.
Yeah, Enzo Benito in the other Ferrari is there in 9th place. David Greco, as you say, was a legendary sim racer and then moved on to working on physics for, I think, for the Formula One games. He's the guy who sort of designs all the physics for those now. So, yeah, really impressive. Jack Keithley, who had that brake problem in the SRO Charity Challenge, will be looking to do better. He's a Williams esports driver, but I think this is going to be really frantic, David.
Indeed, Will Tregurtha was making the point on Twitter that actually, because he's, yes, a real world driver, but he's ended up in the Silver Series against all the sim racing experts, his life is going to be tougher than it was for all the guys in the Pro Series, because the pros racing against pros is one nature, but a real world driver, as we saw at Monza, racing against all the sim experts is completely different. So I'm not suggesting he's getting his excuses in early, but Will getting his excuses in early. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the other excuses you can have is that you don't run on Assetto Corsa Competizione as your natural chosen platform. A lot of these guys actually entered into the Nürburgring 24-hour virtual race, which is happening right now. They may have already done a couple of hours in GT cars, not on Assetto Corsa Competizione. So they've got to adapt their driving style for the different platforms as well as for the different cars.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real challenge, and that's where you see the top line racers come through that can do it on multiple platforms. That's where it gets really impressive, especially for me, someone like David Tonizza and Enzo Benito, who can do it here on this simulator platform, and then can perform on the sort of simcade game that the Formula One games are, because those two are very different techniques to get good lap times there. But it's Niels Neuerks on pole position, and David, he was impressive last time out at Monza.
He was, and you can tell that he's a thinking driver as well, because he's gone for a car for the rest of the championship based on its success around Silverstone. The McLaren is what he has defected to from Mercedes. He was very impressive at Monza. Yes, I know he was penalised for the contact in the Mercedes fight for the race lead, but given that we were concerned about fuel consumption in that race, he drove around all the problems. And if you take that one incident aside, he was just very, very impressive indeed. So I think Niels Neuerks will be hard to beat here. He's in the right car, and starting from pole position, he's going to be worth watching, isn't he? 4 McLarens lock out the front of the grid here. So where do you find the first Mercedes? Only 6th on the grid. The first Porsche, only 8th. Neuerks was impressive at Monza, and I think we'll see the same here. Different car for him, but the level of skill will still be there.
Can I ask a question of all these armchair quarterbacks we got working this afternoon? We're going to watch sim drivers race at Silverstone. Are we going to see a different sort of style of racing? Are they going to be a lot less combative? Is there going to be a lot less contact between them than we saw in the pro race?
Well,
Quite possible.
Yeah, it certainly is, but we can actually have a little bit of a word now with the pole sitter from the last race, Fabrizio Crestani. We will answer your question, John, before too long, but Fabrizio, thank you for joining us. Pole position in the last race, but we didn't see what happened between you and Ben Barnicoat. Can you talk us through it? Fabrizio is on mute at the moment by the looks of things. Luigi, can you hear us? Can you talk to us? Luigi Di Lorenzo, who just missed out on the top 3. Luigi, talk us through the last couple of laps, in particular, your battle with Raffaele Marciello. Oh, also muted as well. So there we go. We've got them both in the room ready to talk, but they've both muted their microphones at the moment.
All right,
so,
Jack, well, I'll answer my question, Jack.
Okay.
About sim racers, will they drive a different style of race to the pro drivers?
I think you'll see less. This is a bold claim now. You're going to see less chaos, I think, in the opening laps, because that's something you notice with other series that I've been commentating on. When you get the real racing drivers, they're a little bit more, this is a simulation, I can go for a gap even if it doesn't work out. You know, they're not sort of worried about crashing. Whereas I think sim drivers have that fear of crashing because this is very important to them, you know, and they've built their career on getting good results. So it's important for them not to crash, not from a health and safety point of view in the way it is in the real world, but from just simply a competitive point of view. Would you agree with that, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. This means everything to them. This is one of the biggest stages that a sim driver can perform on in front of such a huge audience. So they really want to do a great job, and therefore they certainly don't want to crash. And it's just part of the respect that sim drivers have, I think. There does seem to be this respect in racing not to be too brutal and too combative.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be getting underway with the silver class race before too long. A reminder, Jordan Pepper, Ben Barnicoat and Raffaele Marciello, the top 3 in the first race, which was for the pro drivers. And it is Jordan Pepper now who's at the top of the standings. And I think now we have managed to get hold of Fabrizio Crestani. Fabrizio,
Hi everyone.
Hi. Talk us through your race, because it, lost the lead at the start. But what happened with you and Ben Barnicoat? We didn't see it.
Yeah, well, disappointed at the moment. It was very tight. I wasn't expecting him to block it in the first 5 minutes of the race, but yeah, he decided to do that, and it was close, and we had a little bit of contact, and then yeah. From that moment, my race was destroyed, but yeah, I tried to recover in the end.
Okay, well, you must have been pleased with the pace you showed, though. To take pole position by 0.4 of a second was very impressive. You must feel good for the rest of the championship.
Sure, it was looking good. Yeah, I'm disappointed now, but for sure the potential was there, and hopefully I can do better in the future.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us, Fabrizio.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's check in now with Luigi De Lorenzo, who just missed out on the top three in the end. Luigi, we've been discussing that last couple of laps with Raffaelli. What did you make of it from your point of view?
Can I speak Italian?
Yeah, go for it.
Ok.
Okay.
Con Marcello abbiamo avuto un piccolo, diverbio. Io ho chiuso l'interno, lui però purtroppo ha provato di nuovo a...
Do you have any English in you, Luigi?
No.
No? Okay. Well, we'll try and get someone to translate that. Thank you for joining us, Luigi.
Get an
Grazie.
English girlfriend, that'll help.
Yeah, that's good. Good advice. Good advice. So there we go. There's
Sounded like he was
Luigi
blaming
De
Marcello
Lorenzo.
to me.
Yeah, I think I didn't need to hear the interview to think that might be the case.
It makes a change also, Jack. For sure, I am very happy, which is what you get on most podiums these days.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So we are not far away from the silver race, which is going to be getting underway soon. Nils Noyak's on pole position. Yura Petrochenko, the Russian, alongside him on the front row of the grid. Patrick Selva and Arthur Camara are on row 2, with David Tonitza starting in 5th place. And as I say, we shouldn't be too far away from the cars lining up on the grid and getting the racing underway.
Some news from the end of that last race from race control. Rafael Marcello did get a 2-second post-race penalty for the contact with the 44 car. And Alex Buncombe got a post-race drive-through penalty. We don't yet know for how much, and I'm not quite sure for why. But I think that will drop him down at least one position, which is a shame for so much effort that he's put in over the last couple of weeks. But a lot of drive-through penalties actually from race control throughout that race, and those added to the ones we already saw.
So the confirmed results, I think you'll find on the esports website in due course. Need the results, don't I? So I can virtually fill in my virtual program.
Did you make yourself a program? Did you sort of draw one?
Not yet, but you see, you get the entry lists and the timetable and staple them all together and write the results. I have done one from Monza. You won't
really?
Yeah.
Really? Did you do like a front cover and stuff?
No, I didn't go that far. I should have done, really, shouldn't I?
Yeah, come on. What else are you doing at the moment?
It's a fair point. I'll make more effort for this one. How about that?
Okay, and we look forward to seeing it, because David on Twitter at the moment is posting various programs from Alton Park in the mid to late 1970s. So maybe you can post this one on Twitter once it's finished.
We'll get there. I discovered the other day the Silverstone 1,000 kilometers, Jack, from 1987, which was good old Group C days, Silk Cut Jaguars, and what I've been, a 15-year-old, and I flicked through this, looking at who was racing, and I discovered that during the course of the day, my program had been autographed by one John Watson.
Really?
Yeah. It'll be on Twitter later in the week, I promise.
Fantastic.
All I can say is once a mega, always a mega.
John, you're too kind. Yeah.
I got
along, and I think I probably was a little bit more abrupt than you're generously suggesting.
Did you like doing autographs, Watty? Was that something you enjoyed?
Well, if you win the British Grand Prix, as I did in 1981, Jack, as you well remember, I spent about 5 hours after the Grand Prix, as you well remember, signing autographs, and didn't leave the circuit until about 9:30, as you well remember too.
I remember it well. Only 9 years before I was born. I did my my John Watson model arrived in the post the other day, like of the car, to be clear.
Oh, thanks for that.
Yeah, so of 1983, the Longreach car from 1983. So
Lovely
there we go.
Model, lovely model.
Yeah, it's a lovely model. Right, we are about to go racing again then for the second time this afternoon. It's going to be the silver class, and this is for the top sim racers in the world that have been invited to the competition. You at home can enter the AM class. If you head to SROesports.com, you will find out how to enter that and what the stipulations are with that series, because that's all about just getting hot laps in at home if you want to get involved and get on track. But we're focusing on the pro drivers, which has been won by Jordan Pepper. He's now at the top of the championship, and now we are moving to the silver class, which is for these professional invited sim racers. Niels Noyux is on pole position, the Dutchman, with Yuya Petrochenko alongside him on the front row of the grid, the Russian. Patrick Selva and Arthur Kamara are in third and fourth, and David Tonitsa completes the top five. Another 1 hour race coming up. So once again, it's over to the commentators. Ben Constant-Juras, 5 times Formula 1 Grand Prix winner, also winner of the 1981 British Grand Prix and the 1976 Austrian Grand Prix and the 1983 USA West Grand Prix. Those are the only 3 I can remember off the top of my head. John Watson, and also lead commentator David Addison.
Jack, thank you very much indeed. It is time to go racing just about. We are, 10 seconds or so away from releasing the stars of the sim world. And this is going to be fascinating because for many of us, this is a step into a world we just don't know. These guys are hugely accomplished, but they're now showing their skills to a different audience. And as the cars accelerate away from the line, it's a McLaren lockout at the head of the grid. Niels Noyux, the man in the G2 esports car, the McLaren 720S GT3, starting on pole position with Yura Petrochenko alongside Patrick Selva and Arthur Kamara. Third and fourth, again in McLaren's David Tonitsa for Ferrari, fifth on the grid. And Amir Hosseini, who was so impressive at Monza as well, prior to contact with Noyux, staying with his Mercedes. He is sixth on the grid. Now, we can enjoy this as a race, but Ben, who knows more about these drivers than John and I do, can pick out some of the stars. And again, out of such a big grid, Ben, there are plenty of drivers to appreciate the skills thereof.
Yeah, we've mentioned quite a few of them already, but at the back of the field, there's a couple of surprises. Jaroslav Honzik, perhaps not his chosen platform, perhaps more of an RF2 driver than he is of an Assetto Corsa Competizione. And like I said a bit earlier, every platform feels different. It's not just a case of you drive a Lamborghini or a Bentley in one platform, it feels exactly the same in another. They all have their quirks, and especially also with this particular competition, they all have their quirks in the way you set the cars up. There are kind of little secrets in all these softwares to make the cars perform better. So that's one of the things that all these teams will have been working on, teams of drivers in the same brand. They'll be trying to work together to get the best setup, to not only to get a good pace over one lap in qualifying, but then to make the tyres last throughout the whole race and the fuel last as well. Williams esports driver Jack Keithley in a Bentley further back, Toivonen as well, and then we've already mentioned right at the back of the field, presumably not getting a time in at all, was Tobias Pfeffer. He was right at the front of our field in Monza, but he is 48th and last.
And in this context, Ben, as well, we talked about it in the Pro Series, but you've got manufacturers with a proper Silver Series team, haven't you?
There's only a couple of them, but it's fantastic to see the likes of Ferrari and Bentley supporting these drivers and really giving them some backing and perhaps some engineering help as well. There's a BMW in the field. BMW, a huge supporter as well of esports, and they almost have their own esports department now at BMW Motorsports, looking after the various brands, because in their words, if somebody jumps into their brand and competes in a race, we want them to win. Whether it be a broadcast race and a high-level race like this, or whether it be a fun race. So they all are trying to support the drivers to make sure they can be as best as possible. And of course, Silverstone also is preferring some brands to others. We saw the Lamborghini very fast in Monza, but certainly in the hands of Dennis Lind in the pro race, just nowhere here at Silverstone.
Now, Tobias Pfeffer as you were saying, second in the qualifying race at Monza, only 32nd in the actual final, but with work to do here from 48th on the grid. Josh Martin for Team Parker Racing's Bentley 47th. He'll be another driver to watch. So too Jaroslav Honzik and Tiziano Brioni should be making some progress. Will Tregurtha we touched on earlier, but Will only 35th on the grid, so you can expect a lot of shuffling as we get through the next hour of racing. Down they come into Brooklands then. Number 26 is the all-red McLaren of Yura Petrichenko on the outside of the front row. Patrick Selva and Arthur Camera lining up on the second row of the grid. What about the Ferrari? We saw in the 3-hour endurance race here, real-world race here last year, Ferrari come out on top. So can David Tonitza for the FDA Hublot Esports team triumph in this, and Amir Husseini in the Mercedes, the type of car that we have had in the top three in the pro race? Up through Woodcote Corner they come. If the officials are happy, then the cars can be released into 60 minutes of racing, around 31 laps, all being well, as the cars now come through the right of Woodcote Corner. Niels Neujoks slightly in advance of the rest of them. You've got to be careful here not to anticipate the starts, as the field then now gets set ready to be released down towards Copse Corner, and as they get towards the timing line, then the field will be released now, and down towards Copse they go, with Neujoks just having the advantage. He turns into Copse Corner just ahead, powers his way out the other side. So Niels Neujoks it is that takes pole, converts that into the lead of the race. Second is Yura Petrichenko as they head up towards the Beckett's S's for the first time. Patrick Selva runs next in the queue. Arthur Camera trying to make some good progress as well. Up into fifth already is the Mercedes of Hosseini. Now we need to make sure everybody gets through Beckett safely for the first time. I was going to say so far so good, but Husseini, John, is the one off the road.
No, David, they didn't. There was contact coming into Maggots. A car was tagged sideways. We didn't just call the back of the incident. I don't know whether that will be reviewed or not, but certainly at the front of the field, we got those four McLarens just blocking out the entire racetrack. And before you get anywhere, it's the first of the Mercedes in fifth place, Pisani, and you can see the Mercedes diving down the inside. Well, a courageous move on the opening lap. Can he make it stick? He's on the wrong part of Club Corner. Runs wide at the middle part and then has to find a way, but he's going to squeeze. He's done it. He managed to get the momentum and took that fourth place away.
That was a good pass, wasn't it? So round the outside goes Amir Hosseini ahead of the Monza charity race winner, Arthur Camera, who's defected, as we've been saying, to McLaren from Mercedes here. So heading up towards Village then on the opening lap, you've got the Rover Racing liveried Porsche in the mix, as well as the cars turn now up through the loop, ready to accelerate down towards Brooklands for the first time. But Ben, a good opening lap by Niels Neujoks, trying to build up the advantage over the rest.
And nice and clean, as you expect. There was a bit of chaos, as John said, further back. It was Parker that got put sideways even before he got to Maggots and collected Brioni and Honzik. So three big names. They are still running, but will be running with damage on that opening lap. I was questioning whether we were ghosting on the first lap, because that's what we saw from the pro race, but I don't think that these silver drivers were given ghosting on the first lap, so they really had to be careful not to make contact, which is nice to see. Ghosting is where everybody becomes a ghost around you, so if you do make contact on the first lap, it does not influence the other driver.
I don't remember the first pro lap being all that ghosted. I seem to remember there were some fairly frantic moments in all of that. However, you're right, this has been a proper gloves-off opening lap. And here, Neujoks, ahead of Petrichenko, is not yet getting away. He leads, but he's not escaping up the road. So he comes through the Beckett's S's, bit of correction needed there. Through Chapel Curve now, onto the Hanger Straight. But Petrichenko, John, in second place, looking as though he's lining up for a move. Down through Stoke Corner they turn, and now the run up towards the end of Vale. Neujoks holding sway up front, and with the top two just getting away slightly from Patrick Selva. The best of the rest behind is Amir Hosseini. Now what can the Mercedes do to get onto terms with the rest of them? And that, I think, was Neujoks getting it wrong at the end of Vale. McLaren gets sideways and Niels Neujoks sideways, trying to recover, but he's going to drop down the order, surely.
See exactly who exited stage left there, but so easy to get just a little bit too excited on the throttle and lose the rear end. We'll find out as the live timing updates itself between each sector who is missing from this front group. One of them at the front McLaren certainly further back now. Is it Neujoks has thrown away yet another opportunity? This is kind of something, it is Neujoks, yeah. And it's something that he's done so often in headline sim races of late.
Yeah, so Niels Neujoks was looking good, made that little error at the end of Vale, and he's got 56 minutes in which to try and repair the damage as they dive now down towards the end of Wellington straight into Brooklyn. So Patrick Selva, who was third at the start of the lap, leads. Petrochenko still staying in second place as the rest of the pack dives down towards Brooklyn's 494. Andrea Capaccia in the Audi goes through, and he in turn is coming under attack. Number 20 Mercedes you see there, that is Moritz Lerner. The Porsche being hung out to dry on the outside line. Number 63 going through. That's the Lamborghini of Kamil Frankschak, US Air Force trained pilot instructor. Down towards the right-hander of Copse Corner. Bentley versus Porsche. But right now, looking good up front. Patrick Selva, third in qualifying and leading the way.
Yeah, he got that overtake and was able to pull away cleanly. And watching the battle again up into Maggots. But Bentley, Porsche, Bentley. Over the grass, running a little bit wide in the middle part of the Beckett's complex. No harm done, no damage done. And again, the sim drivers appearing to understand what they need to do, maybe more than the pro drivers are doing in this early phase. We're only 5 minutes in, and other than that incident that occurred in the opening lap, up into Maggots, it's been pretty much clean so far.
And it looks as though there was contact between the leading two drivers, Petrenko and Neujoks. Race directing looking at it right now.
Okay, and also Luca Lucio is being looked at for an incident on the opening lap of the race. So the officials, as ever, being kept busy. The Bentley goes through. That is Alberto Garcia in the K-Pax Racing by SRO Esports Continental GT3. And he's chasing after Chris Hooker in the Rover Racing coloured Porsche, the German team, and Hooker in turn on the back of David Tonitza now. So some good drivers all squabbling within the top six. Arthur Camera fourth. Now, is he biding his time here, Ben, do you think, or is he thinking to himself, should have stayed with the Mercedes?
I don't think the Mercedes is the right car to have around here, although Marcello managed to do something with it, and we have Hosseini up in third position. Definitely the McLaren looks the chosen car for this particular track, and that is why we've seen so many people convert to it. I'm not quite sure of the regulations as to whether they have to stay in the same car now for the whole of the competition, or whether they can jump around.
I thought once you committed, you had to stay there. Of course, it's going to be interesting when we get to the second round of the championship, because the brands carry ballast. Even if you didn't finish in the top three, if your type of car did, you still have to carry weight. So don't expect there to be quite the same runaway win for a Bentley, for example, next time out in the Pro class. Now, right now, it's still looking good for McLaren. It's a 1-2, but we had that at the start of the Pro race, and they managed to get themselves together. Amir Hosseini, impressed at Monza. What can he do now in third place to go after the two leading cars as they come onto the Hangar Straight once again?
What I really like is that a lot of these silver drivers will have been working with the pro drivers to maximize the setup options. So these kind of the unsung heroes, if you like, of the pro race, they would have been helping those pro drivers make the best out of Assetto Corsa Competizione and the cars that they have, and sharing setup tweaks. And we see it in so many competitions now. These sim drivers are being used as consultants for the real pros.
Yes, you wonder who's the real star, don't you? Whether it's the sim or the real world driver these days. But these are two very important markets, and as lots of people have been saying, when we get to the end of this lockdown period, I think you'll find that esports, that sim racing has taken on a far greater role within motorsport, and is far better felt and thought of by others than ever it was. It's not something to be ignored or looked down on, because you've seen the importance that it plays now. Number 20 Mercedes, Moritz Lerner, pressing on, and he accelerates then now onto Wellington Straight. He's down in 16th place is Lerner, the Williams Esports entered driver, coming now in towards Brooklands, but up front it remains McLaren's first and second.
David, I don't have timing and scoring where I'm watching from, but out of interest, is it possible to say at this phase of the race, is Patrick Silva leading this race? Is he lapping quicker than, let's say, Jordan Pepper would have done in the Bentley, or are they more or less within the same ballpark times?
About a second faster, these guys, than we saw in the pro category a bit later on. The fastest lap time we've got so far, a 58.1, and we saw 59.0 in the pro race.
So that comes back to the experience of sim racing for these drivers. Patrick Selva then leading the way from Petrichenko, one slow car on Hanger Straight, drops down through the pack. Look as towards Stowe, looking back from Enzo Bonito now, running in what was 8th. It's now 7th place, but he's under attack. Niels Neujoks, he's trying to fight back, isn't he? And Neujoks dives up the inside line, finds the space, finds the place. That was a good move.
Good move. A little bit of looseness in the back of the McLaren as he got the job done, but it doesn't matter. The only concern he will have is, as we've been referring to both in the pro race and it'll have a bearing here in the sim drivers race, is don't overuse your tyres, don't overheat your tyres, especially that left rear, because you're going to need that tyre when you get to the last 15 minutes.
Chris Hooker in the Porsche 6 going through. There he is. He's got the Bentley of Garcia tucked up behind him, Alberto Garcia, but the Porsche staying competitive. It's not yet moving up the order, but it is staying in that leading gaggle. So with 50 minutes to go, and bear in mind you need to look after tyres, how will the Porsche fare? We had a good run out of the Pro Championship Porsche of Louis Delatraz earlier on in the day. And so what can here Chris Hooker do? Tonitza is the next target, but if anything, Ben, he's having to think about defending from that Bentley, isn't he?
He's certainly been towing that Bentley along for a little bit and helping the two of them, and perhaps even the Bentley learning a little bit from the car that's just passed him. It's something I always think about. It's somebody gone past us. Drive-through penalty for Petrenko, by the way. That's very, very key to this race. Neujoks was disposed of at Vale, and Petrenko has been given a drive-through and been apportioned blame, if you like, so he'll be dropping out a second.
Okay, so Petrichenko being given a drive-through penalty, and that's going to allow Amir Hosseini, number 92, there he is, up into second place. Hosseini would dearly love to win this and right the wrongs of Monza in the charity race, wouldn't he, where he was dispatched in that contact with Niels Neujoks. Neujoks in his recovery is in 8th place. He's not...
I think we're losing David there for a second. Hosseini, though, really under pressure from Camera here. Camera running a little bit wider through Stowe, trying to carry a bit more momentum. And right under the rear wing of that Mercedes. Doesn't feel to me as though the Mercedes is the right car to have here. Certainly it was in Monza, but Camera just, the McLaren just looks really balanced around here, and Camera pushing hard.
Big thing, of course, Ben, is you can catch, but can you overtake? And with the balance, the difference in speed between the Mercedes and the McLaren, I don't see an opportunity arising other than if Hosseini himself makes an error, then going into village, gets it pretty much perfect, then up to the loop, the left-hand corner, again makes his apex. There's nothing more that you can do if you're following in the McLaren. And well, they will be in second place come the end of the lap, because Petrichenko will be going in to pay his penalty. So as much as Hammerhammer is pushing the Mercedes forward, the gap has stayed more or less constant over this last lap.
That's right. So Petrichenko second, gets the drive-through message. So does Luca Losio, who is down in 18th place, and also from causing dramas on the first lap, Kieran Prendergast is being given a drive-through for, quote, causing a mass collision, end quote. So Prendergast will be penalised, as well as now battle is on, look, between number 20 Moritz Lerner and 23 Eamon Murphy in the Porsche. Coming up towards Woodcote Corner, 47 minutes and change still on the clock. And do we have people this time serving those drive-through penalties? Hopefully we do, because otherwise you start to incur the wrath of officialdom yet further.
Moritz Lerner is one of those drivers we see compete on multiple platforms. He's really, really good at jumping from different sims. Perhaps not, again, a master of Assetto Competizione, someone like Enzo Benito is. Side by side through Maggotts and Beckett. That's very, very brave, and they've just about managed to do it in a way that Al Khalifa in the pro race did not at all. But we're seeing more drive-throughs being cleared, and still side by side onto the main straight.
And already tucked up between the two cars, right under the rear wing, trying to make it a 3 wide coming down into Stowe. Who's going to come out in front? Well, it's the Lamborghini, in fact. So no change, but can't get any closer. Bentley looking to go down the inside into Vale, then cuts back to the outside. Again, no advantage. It's the Lamborghini running directly behind the Bentley that just has to sit there and wait, because his opportunity will come.
And we'd seen going through Beckett's that Chris Hooker's Rover Porsche was off the road, so he has dropped way back into 22nd place now, having been in the top 6 when we last saw him. So Lerner, number 20, goes through, and we switch to looking at number 3, Tariq Gamil. So the Bentley, another of the K-Pax Bentleys, goes up through Village now. Gamil is in 19th place and crawling all over the back of 333, which is Chris Severt's Black Hawk entered Aston Martin. Onto Wellington Straight they come, but up front still, Patrick Selva holds sway. Another great little scrap here, because up the inside line tries to go Lerner. Do we get them 3 wide at Brooklands? Not quite. Mercedes ahead on the inside line. Is the job done for Luffield? He's on the outside line. Gets his nose in front, but back on the inside line is going to come the opposition. Now the run up through the gears then, through Woodcote Corner, being hung out to dry on the outside line. Look, is Moritz Lerner. There's contact between the two. He's up the curb. A virtual dead heat as they went across the timing line, but Lerner, I think, is going to have to give way and slot in behind. Yes, he is. So Biancolila goes through, hangs onto the place. Number 14 then in the Ferrari. So Biancolila goes by, hangs onto the place, but that was fairly brutal stuff coming past the pits.
Yeah, and Eamon Murphy in the Porsche sitting there waiting. He saw all the fun and games going down into Copse Corner. No track space to make a move, but look how close he is to the tail of the Mercedes coming out through Chapel Curve onto Hanger Straight. Now, is the Mercedes going to pull away? It's fractionally edging away from the Porsche as they come down the quickest part of Silverstone. Can he make a move down the inside? Well, he's dived down and he's made it. It was a late call. I didn't think he was going to do it, and then all of a sudden, rush of blood to the brain or the foot, whichever, and he made it, and he made it stick.
And we're not done yet, are we? Battles rage on then, but the Porsche making good progress then. Good pass that by Eamon Murphy ahead of Moritz Lerner. Now he's onto the back of Biancolila to see what he can do about the 488 GT3 Ferrari coming out of Club Corner now. Past the wing on the right, up towards Abbey. Flash of the lights behind, look, from Moritz Lerner. But the Porsche here, Eamon Murphy doing a good job, and he might take advantage of a curb-hopping Ferrari. They're going to be together, are they? Yes, they are, and through goes the Porsche around the outside. Job done before Village.
Great job on one lap. 2 positions overtaken in 1 lap. Porsche had the speed where it counted. The Ferrari was marginally offline. And now Murphy in the Porsche has made 2 positions up. So he should be up to, well, it's showing currently 13th. Wait and see what happens. And already pulling away from that group of cars that he was in battle with.
Petrochenko goes into pit lane and takes his drive-through penalty. He'll be exiting out of what was second position, and so now we've got a mega battle for second position. Husseini is still ahead, but just behind is Arthur Camara and then David Tonizza. That Ferrari, remember in Monza, that came on so strong at the end of the race, and I feel like the same kind of setup philosophy was employed in the pro race, which means we should see Tonizza and Bonito be really strong with their tyres when we get to the end of this 1 hour encounter.
And just watching this battle on screen, you were mentioning earlier you thought that Tonizza would have, Camara would have the edge over Hosseini in the Mercedes. Yet the gap has not really changed very much. Is that, do you think, Camara hanging back and being, cautious, or is he just, that's all he's got in the tank?
The problem is they've given a 5-second lead now to Selva. Patrick Selva is happily on his, exactly like we saw in our pro race with Jordan Pepper. He just needs to pace himself now and get through the traffic, although with these pro sim races, I doubt we'll have as much traffic as we saw in the pro race. So he really needs to clear and and start chasing down Selva in the McLaren.
Yeah, but in the meantime, the Mercedes is hanging on to second place. The gap, as you point out, is extending, but the McLaren, which you alluded to as the better of the 2 cars, the quicker of the 2 cars, still struggling to find a way to get past into second place.
After his drive-through, Petrochenko is 27th, so let's see what progress can be made, still with 42 minutes of the race to go. Hosseini and Camara need to, in a sense, work together here, stop fighting one another and see if they can go after Patrick Selva. The danger being that David Tonizza will get up and past them. So this is 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th. Stretch it further back because Alberto Garcia is there in the Bentley. And Niels Neujoks is 6th. He's almost on the back of this queue, so they need to stop squabbling if they can and try to go after the race leader. Patrick Selva clear up front as they go over the line once more here.
Well, the Mercedes we know is a very good car, very well balanced car. Maybe at Silverstone isn't the ultimate in terms of sheer speed, but if you know how to use your car, and these sim drivers know how to use these sim cars probably better than the pro drivers. We established that from comments made earlier. It is not an easy pass. So where do you find your way? A big McLaren past an even larger Mercedes. Not many options.
It's a fair point, and it's a busy circuit as well with such a full field. Will Tregertha up to 23rd, making a bit of progress all the while. Alpha Camera then now trying to do something about Amir Hosseini for fear of being mugged by David Tonitza. But is Hosseini now holding up this group of cars? It looks as though Camera is quicker out of Stowe, thinks about making a move at the end of Vale, but once more the Mercedes is just able to fend him off. But Camera, I think now, is getting a little bit more toey, John, isn't he? He needs to get on with this before he starts being monstered by the Ferrari.
Yeah, the Mercedes runs wide in the exit of club. That's given a chance to Camera to make a move up the inside into Abbey, almost contact, but whoa! Well, brave move by both drivers, and Mercedes maintains the position, but coming up into Village is another opportunity. But it's the Ferrari at the third of these three cars. In fact, the Ferrari's under challenge from the Bentley. So all four cars almost tripping over one another, not making contact, but at the same time, each is causing the other to slow down because they're driving more defensively now than in an attacking form.
I'm surprised that Hosseini managed to hang on to the place, and actually that Camera hung on to third, because it looked as though Tonitza was about to find a place somewhere, somehow. To the outside line goes Camera, breaks ludicrously late going into Brooklands. Can't get it done. Back through goes Amir Hosseini to retake second place, but look at the line of cars behind. It's growing and growing and growing. Out wide goes Tonitza. Garcia in the dark green Bentley now gets up the inside then as they head up towards the line once more. The K-Pax racing car tries to go through, can't quite do it. Behind the pair is Niels Neujoks. Then there's a bit of a gap back to Bonito, and then Dietrich at the rear of the queue. Dietrich in the Porsche number 85 swings through Kopp's corner. Jan-Marcel Dietrich, he's another one that's suddenly arrived in this ever-increasing battle pack for second place, with the cork in the bottle being the Mercedes of Amir Hosseini.
And Hosseini doing precisely what he needs to do. He's backing everybody up. What he must not do is allow Camera, who is now directly behind. You can see the view from the rear of the Bentley. How close can you get? A dive down the inside into Brooklands. Again, we've seen him, well, this is in fact coming down Hanger Straight, so he's gone to the left, coming down to Stowe. Going to try the long way round, but realises can't do it, gets a little bit wide, gets on the rubber, as does the Mercedes on the exit coming out of Stowe, but still has maintained his second place. In the meantime, Patrick Selva is disappearing down a clear road, almost a mirror of what we saw from Jordan Pepper in the Bentley in the Pro Race.
Now Garcia is trying to squabble his way with Neujoks, but Neujoks round the outside goes through. That's going to put him up into fifth place, is it not now? Niels Neujoks recovering, so Garcia loses out in all of that. And Amir Hosseini then, who's been the cork in the bottle, as we've been saying, cars crawling all over the back of him, is still having to defend as the cars now head up towards Village. Patrick Selva, though, is being allowed a really easy ride in this, as there you see on the outside line Garcia. They come out of the loop now. And look at the Aston Martin starting to creep into the mix as well, because Philippe Simard then is starting to close, sorry, not the Aston Martin, the Bentley of Simard up into 8th place, forgive me. Down they come into Brooklands once more with 38 minutes still to go.
I wonder whether race control will take a look at that pass from Niels Neujoks. I know in real world that's not really allowed to go so far off track, round the outside, carry the momentum and make the pass. And so if we have a real world race director, then in this virtual world, I think Neujoks may be faced with a penalty. Hosseini, though, with a little bit of breathing space now, he can kind of relax because Camera's not quite close enough. Now, is it that Hosseini has got better pace this lap? No, I mean, his pace is dreadful, but nobody's anywhere near Selva's pace. 7 seconds now to the good. Hosseini is doing laps that are over a second slower than Selva, even though he is in second position, and Camera will be back under his rear wing very shortly.
Well, that would be the idea, but at the minute, Hosseini has managed to eke out a couple more tenths of a second in this second and third place battle. There are bits of the circuit clearly where you can see the McLaren has the advantage. There's other parts where the Mercedes is disadvantaged. So it's ebb and flow. So second place, Mercedes, third place, McLaren, but there's that Patrick Silva. Well, whatever the gap he's got between first and second, it's a comfortable afternoon.
I think you're right.
David,
Patrick
remember
Selva.
what happened in Monza with Hosseini? The reason why Hosseini ended up losing the lead of the race was he was incredibly forceful with his defence on Niels Neujoks, and that's what caused the contact between the two of them. Again, he is fast, but in a race conditions, he is under pressure, and he can't do the same thing again with Arthur Camera because we'll see an accident.
It's true. I mean, Camera looks the quicker of the two. Hosseini is good at defending, you're right. Here he's perhaps not being overly defensive. He's not weaving around. He's putting the car where it needs to be and exploiting the benefit of the Mercedes where there is a benefit to be exploited. The McLaren has its strengths in other parts of the circuit, but he can't yet really find a way by. But
well, you can see in Luffield how close the McLaren can close down to the Mercedes, but then on the acceleration out of Luffield, you get that big lusty V8 Mercedes engine against the twin turbo of the McLaren, and the gap has almost doubled from the point where the apex in Luffield to where they are pit down straight into Copse Corner. Again, the McLaren closes fractionally mid-corner on the Mercedes, but up the hill and then towards into Maggots and then into Beckett's, and this fast right, then the slightly slower left, and then the even more slow right back then through Chapelcar. Frustrating it is, make no mistake, for Camera. He can do little more than he's doing. He has to hope that there's a traffic incident or something, because Hosseini has yet not made any indication of making any errors so far.
Well, down to Stowe Corner they come once again, and the Mercedes hanging on to position. Now, the next little battle is for fourth, David Tonitza versus Niels Neujoks. There they are. You can see on the Lumirac display on the screen the position they are in the race, so you know what battle you're looking at. Fourth and fifth go through. It's Ferrari ahead of McLaren. They're out of Club Corner. Goes number one, Niels Neujoks, getting himself closer and closer and closer to Tonitza. But Amir Hosseini is fending off any challenge that Arthur Camera offers. And Ben, as you've said, this is just playing right into the hands of Patrick Selva, who is getting further and further and further away.
Selva's pace is fantastic as well. There's only one man that's anywhere close to Selva's pace, and that's Niels Neujoks up into fifth position. And Neujoks has got traffic and a dirty air to contend with as well. So a really, really good drive from Neujoks. We go on board with him here. He's got Tonitza ahead of him. And Tonitza's impressed me. Tonitza's come from F1 Esports, the Simcade game that Charles Leclerc has been sort of starring on the last couple of weeks. And I think Tonitza and Leclerc have been working together on how to get the best out of this very simulator platform. And like we saw in Monza, doing not only a good job, but also the best Ferrari and ahead of Enzo Benito, who, for me, is considered one of the masters of this platform.
So past the pit, Selva leads the way. There, number one, Niels Neujoks. He's still stuck down in fifth place. He's 3/10 back from Tonitza. I mean, the gaps are close, other than first to second, which is now 9.3 seconds. We've done 13 laps of the race. We've got just over half an hour still to go. And now through Beckett, you can see Arthur Camera is getting ever more frustrated. He's stuck behind the Mercedes. He has been for lap after lap after lap, and he knows he needs to get on with the job now. Is this going to be an opportunity?
What's really hurting the McLaren is that he's running constantly in the wash, the dirty air coming off the rear of the Mercedes, and that has a consequence every time you put your brakes on, because your brakes are probably almost on their limit. Your front tire is probably warmer than it wants to be, so the initial bite might not be there. Having said that, the McLaren still has got the strengths around the racetrack, but it doesn't appear to me to be terribly difficult for Hosseini to maintain that second place. It's almost as if it's a done deal. He knows he's got control of Camera, and while they come together, parts of the circuit, other bits they pull away, he's got control of second place right now.
Ben, just explain about sim racing for a moment. It's not like real world racing where you have a pit crew, they can talk to you on a radio, or there's a pit board. Hosseini is a long way back from Patrick Selva. Does he perhaps think he's in the lead and all he's doing is defending here, or is there some mechanism for reminding him that he ought to be chasing after that car that's 10 seconds to the good?
Oh, absolutely. On his head-up display, he can see exactly what position he is. He'll see to the 10th of a second the gaps around him, and again, just jinx. Quite late that time, his defence into Brooklands. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he knows exactly what's happening around him as well. He may even have a radar to show him exactly where the cars around him are if there is an overlap, and he'll have a virtual spotter telling him if there is an overlap as well. So you can turn it off, but it's not advised because it's much easier to have a contact if you have an overlap. And Camera weaving around in the virtual mirrors set up the way he wants, and he'll be feeling the pressure of feeling the threat of that.
Yeah, and then just watching Camera on this particular lap, getting closer yet again to the back of Hosseini in the Mercedes. And maybe for the first time, I've noticed Hosseini maybe getting slightly more spooked by the fact that he's getting real pressure. The gap ebbs and flows on different parts of the racetrack. You can see again, it's opened up sufficiently coming down Hanger Straight to frustrate Camera and to give that little bit of relief to Hosseini.
But the line of cars, and here it is growing and growing and growing all the time for second place. Selva 10 seconds clear up the road, and it stretches back to what, 8th place now. Sinard is there in the Bentley. In fact, Jan Marcel Dietrich 9 to the Porsche is not too far off the back of this line. So if anything does start to kick off, it's all going to shuffle around. Patrick Selva driving away into the distance, and we're not quite at the halfway point of this second race of the day here at Silverstone.
Well, I think if Camera can get past Hosseini, it will happen in such a way it will compromise Hosseini to a point that those 4 or 5 cars that are following behind Camera and the McLaren will all be lining up at the earliest opportunity to put the Mercedes a further position or 2 or 3 or 4 behind them. Once they get ahead of them, the Mercedes will just fall back off the radar in terms of being in the battling position for a podium finish. Yeah,
I think you're right. I mean, he's doing a good job of defending now, but once that cork is out of the bottle, the traffic's going to stream through, isn't it? Down they come through Brooklands, then lap 15 we are on. Alpha Camera hanging on to his 3rd place, but he wants to be 2nd and then release, see what he can do about the other McLaren in the lead of the race. 4th is Tonitza still. 5th is Niels Neujoks, and Ben, he's another one who's got stuck, isn't he, Neujoks? He made some of the progress, but he can't get past Tonitza.
No, he's been trying a couple of times, and again, Tonitza heavily defending going into Copse. Neujoks would certainly not want to try and make a move there, because instantly you lose time if you're offline. In fact, Neujoks is offline, and here comes the Bentley. But again, another place you don't really want to run side by side is Maggots and Beckett. So the Bentley backs out of it, and they run line astern, and now the Bentley's lost a bit of momentum, and he's now falling back into the clutches of Bonito in the Ferrari, although actually Bonito made a slight error there, and actually looking at all that line of cars, it's Bonito, which is the 6th car back, under most pressure right now from Simar in the Bentley. And then maybe a move into Stowe.
Let's have a look then, because Hosseini goes a little bit wide. Camera is quick coming down through Vale. He's going to be on the outside line for the end of Vale, but the inside line for Club Corner. Can he force a mistake out of the Mercedes? Hosseini hangs on to 2nd. Now, does he run wide? The gap is there for the taking on the inside line coming through Club. Camera not quite close enough. Takes the apex for the corner. Past the Formula 1 pit. Straight to the middle of the road goes Hosseini to defend. One side goes the McLaren. Everywhere that Camera wants to be, though, Hosseini has it covered through Abbey.
Absolutely. What Hosseini did was drive very, very cleverly. He was being absolutely mullered by Camera, and right, Camera should have taken that position away. But Hosseini did a superb job in just hanging on with the barest of levels of grip coming through the 2-part Club Corner, and even all the way down up to Abbey. It looked as if I thought Camera might take a punt down the inside, compromise himself in the process. But here we are, back to status quo. It's been pretty much this battle going on for 2nd and 3rd position since the lights went out.
Absolutely right. So you've got to take your hat off to Amir Hosseini. He's doing a really good job of defending, and he has done for effectively now 16 laps against the pack behind, headed by Arthur Camera. He is not, thus far, being dislodged from that 2nd place. He's dropping further and further and further away from the race leader, but Camera could barely be any closer going into Copse Corner. He's quicker through the corner. Does he get the run going up towards Beckett? Well, he pulls out at Maggots and has a cheeky look, but it doesn't pay him any good. Now he's got to think about lining up, coming out of Chapel Curve to make a move on the Hanger Straight. 95 Ferrari there. 4th is Tonitza. Niels Neujoks is behind. And see how much curb they take in the mid part of Beckett, as now, John, onto the Hanger Straight. Is this the McLaren's chance for 2nd place?
Well, it's another opportunity. You can see nose to tail, but on the right-hand side of the circuit coming down, Camera having a little look, but I think it's a very risky move. He'd be too tight coming into Stowe. He'd run, probably overrun. And there's the Mercedes. Hosseini has maybe actually, well, he's still side by side coming down, but this time the McLaren has to, again, he's got to concede. Tries to make the undercut, then the cut back to get alongside into the middle part of Club Corner. I mean, how much have you got to do to get past the Mercedes? He's doing all the hard yards, but it's still not happening.
And now Camera is under attack from Tonitza, who has brought Neujoks with him. Gauthier 6th, Bonito 7th, Simar 8th, Dietrich 9th, and Cecilia in 10th place. They're all in a long, long line as there. Niels Neujoks dives up the inside line for 4th. Can't quite do it. Going into Village. through the loop. Ben, you've got to, as I say, give credit to Hosseini. This is some staunch defence of second place, isn't it?
Yeah, although, of course, if there was grass runoff on the outside of Stowe, like there was for many years, that would have been game over for him. He was too tight on the inside line. He ran too wide on the exit, and thanks to the tarmac, was able to keep the momentum and therefore had that inside line for the next corner. But really, a little bit dodgy, a little bit like Naox's pass a few laps ago, but Race Control haven't mentioned it on Niels Naox, and so Hosseini presumably getting away with it as well, but he is not fast. He's now over 2 minutes a lap. Selva kind of looking at that gap and has been matching it the last couple of laps, but actually on the last lap took another second out of these guys. So Camera has now not got the chance, I don't think, to chase down the lead. It is now just a battle for second.
I think you're right about that.
Very much the case. It is a battle for second place, for third place, for fourth place, because of that thought earlier. The minute one of these 4, 5, 6 following cars finds a way past the second place Mercedes, that will then change the complexion of the battle for the top 3 podium positions. First place locked out without second. Patrick Selva, he's gone 13.2 seconds in the lead. Oh, look at Hosseini goes way, way wide, and that allows Camera to come back and move to the left hand. But that Mercedes, it comes off Stowe, even when he runs so wide, he still maintains the momentum. No matter what Camera is doing, there is always a silver Mercedes blocking out that part of the racetrack he wants to use.
So Camera frustrated again. He has a look to the inside line going down towards Abbey. Look at fourth, where it's still Tonitza from Noyox from Garcia. The Mercedes with a length and a half, maybe 2 lengths breathing space up towards the right of Village now. Again, off the Camera, brakes late. Is he going to be able to find a gap on the inside up at the loop? He thinks about it. He chances his arm. Is he going to make contact with him? This, finally, is the door being pushed open. And yes, Arthur Camera on this, lap 18, has finally done it. Through he goes. 24.5 minutes are on the clock. And finally, he's up into second place. Now going after Patrick Selva. But Hosseini in the Mercedes, he's not done yet. He goes round the outside coming into Brooklands. Oh, no, you don't, says Camera. The Monza charity race winner is second at long last. He doesn't just want to stay there. He wants to go after the leader if he can. So now Hosseini is going to be under attack from David Tonitza in the Ferrari as they come across the line. John, Camera worked hard for that.
He did. He worked hard for it. He deserves it. He caught Hosseini unexpectedly going into the loop. Difficult place to make a pass. There's not a lot of room around you. But he got alongside. More importantly, he was on the inside of the Mercedes. And when they came to Aintree, was that quick left-hand curve onto Wellington Straight. He was in the driving seat and he had taken that position away, and he ought to now be able to pull away comfortably and quickly from what is now the third place Mercedes.
So now, Ben, is Hosseini going to be able to hang on to, what, third place? Or do you think they're all now going to start being able to outfox him and find a way through?
Well, the one thing that didn't happen that I thought was going to happen was a bit like a kind of oval NASCAR race. When you find yourself offline, the whole queue comes through. Somehow, in the way that pass manipulated itself, Hosseini only lost one position. He's got back into his rhythm again, and he can do the same thing now to Tonitza and Naox behind. And the problem with Tonitza is he's now in a sandwich of 2 very aggressive sim races. Hosseini, very aggressive with defence. Naox known to be very aggressive with his attacking. And so he's going to have to be very, very careful here. Otherwise, he could find himself being exiting all kinds of stage left.
So as the cars now come out of Village, Hosseini to the loop has got Tonitza crawling all over the back of him. The frustrated Niels Noyox is there as well. He desperately wants to get up or back up the order, having been at the front early on. So Patrick Selva, 14.5 seconds clear with 22 minutes to go. I think he's got this job done, hasn't he? Even somebody like Arthur Camera is going to struggle to make all of that back up before the very end.
It's highly unlikely, I would have thought, but Camera can do anything against the leading McLaren or Selva. It's too big a gap. They've only got 22 minutes of this race remaining, so you're looking at about 22 minutes, 2 minutes a lap, roughly about 12 laps in total. So it would be very, very difficult to take more than a second a lap out of the current race leader at the pace he's running at.
Curious to see what kind of pace he can do now he's got clean air. Arthur Camara's last lap, a 1:58.8, fastest lap of his race so far. Patrick Selva had to match it. He would have known that the positions have changed, and he will now know that there's a very fast McLaren starting to hunt him down. So he's put some laps in and started having matched that 2 minutes that he was seeing behind him being done by Husseini. Now he's having to push.
And it's a very real push in a virtual world, isn't it? So Camara then second, 14.5 seconds back. They're going through number 95, David Tonitza, still with Niels Neujoks behind him. And you can see the way that Camara, having finally got past Hosseini, is escaping up the road. And there, diving to the inside is Neujoks. Is there going to be contact? There's slight contact between the two. Tonitza gets forced out wide. Here comes Garcia in the Bentley up the inside line. So Neujoks, rather than gaining a place, has lost one. He gets forced way out wide, coming out of club corner. He's nearly on the A43. But now to the inside into Abbey. Garcia in the Bentley goes through, up into 5th place, makes that stick, and Alberto Garcia goes by, with Neujoks in danger here, John, of losing more places.
Yeah, I mean, he made a very bold move. It didn't work out. It was a very aggressive move, and he paid the penalty. Didn't get the pass done, and in the process, lost a position to the Bentley. So that's go back, work it all out again. But we've only got 20 minutes remaining, and it is so tight with so little overtaking in this group of cars. You get maybe one, maybe two opportunities at most, and that's going to be it.
That's right, there, the Porsche in the hands of Jan-Marcel Dietrich, on the back now of the Aston Martin of Jesus Cecilia, coming up through Luffield. That's 8th and 9th, those two. Now the gap was 14.5, then it became 14.3 between Selva and Camara, and at the end of the lap, whoopie-doo, it's down by a tenth. It's just not going to happen for Camara unless Selva has a problem.
I think it's drumstick time for Patrick Selva. He'll be getting the drumsticks he carries in the car alongside him. Chewing one of those, just driving with one hand, lift the visor, another little munch on the chicken drumstick. It'll be, in my view, no challenge whatsoever. Camara will drive the wheels off his second place McLaren to try and close it down. But the reality is the time remaining and the speed both cars are capable of lapping at, it's not going to be a big, easy task.
Of course, what they will know as the lead driver, he will see.
So, as Patrick Selva holds sway, 14 seconds clear of the rest. Arthur Camara, Amir Hosseini, David Tonitza, and then Alberto Garcia rounding out the top 5. A word about the man that was on the front row, Yuri Petrichenko, that got his early drive-through. He fell to 27th. He's got himself up into 19th. Another driver that struggles to make progress. This race, perhaps more than the Pro Series race, has been very close, yes, very competitive, yes, but with the sim drivers not making as many errors, perhaps, it's given less opportunity for the order to be shuffled.
I'm looking at Alberto Garcia in the Bentley, currently running in 5th place, and he is literally all over the back of Tonitza in the Ferrari. As we look further down the field, Porsche versus Aston Martin down. This is into
Brooklands.
Yeah, it is Brooklyn. I'm just getting confused with the bridge on the straight. So down into Brooklyn, so Porsche gets ahead of the Aston Martin. In the meantime,
So
that's still waiting to see what it is first to second.
Yeah, that changes 8th. That is Jan-Marcel Dietrich in the Porsche ahead of Jesus Cecilia in the Aston Martin. So Porsche up into 8th place. 18 minutes are on the clock. And look at this gaggle coming towards us. 14th place, Moritz Lerner, we saw earlier on. Up into 15th place now, Petrichenko. And there's more fun and games amongst the Bentleys as they come into Brooklands a little bit further back in the group. The Jack Keithley involved in all of that as well. Mike Nobel, that we saw going so well at Monza. He finished, second, but that was in a Lamborghini. Now Mike Nobel defecting to Bentley for the championship.
I think what's interesting to me is just watching this battle with the Bentleys all tied together, is that it still is the same philosophy, whether it's rail racing, pro sim racing or sim drivers. It's all about track position and qualifying. If you haven't got a good grid position, it's going to be almost, not totally, but almost impossible to make any worthwhile headway. It will come, obviously, through the number of penalties that we saw in the pro driver, but a lot fewer in the sim driver race. So you're more or less stuck midfield. You're going to finish more or less mid.
yes, those that had problems earlier have not been able to fight back, have they? Chris Hooker, for example, still marred in 21st. Will Tregurtha didn't have a problem, but Will didn't qualify so well. He is still stuck in 24th place, so it's close. But yes, it's harder to make some progress, it seems here. So the car's down through Vale. There is Chris Hooker, having just mentioned the Porsche driver, and he is charging on behind the Bentley number 386, which is that of Jaakko Torvinen, who gets the end of Vale wrong, mows the lawn a little bit. Number 19 Lamborghini going through. That is Jaroslav Honchik, the 31-year-old former Fiesta Cup and BMW 130i, I should say, Cup racer in the real world before going into sim racing. So there are examples of drivers from real world racing going into the sim category and doing a very good job within it, as you see the cars now pouring their way once more up through Village. Now 16 minutes are still on the clock. A challenge made there. Look, diving up towards Village, way up the curb, bit of leaning goes on. The BMW just comes out ahead. Martinez just keeping Vroma at bay, but then he gets forced out wide all over the curb. He's going to get back onto the road, is he? Yes. So down they come towards us. Number 300, David Martinez, the Spanish driver in the red M6, just able to consolidate the place as he dives down to the braking area.
Yeah, the Lexus didn't quite have the straight line performance. Normally, the Lexus is mega in a straight line, but in this occasion, BMW, again, twin turbo V8 motor, did enough. He was slightly wide on the edge of the main tree, but consolidated, got the speed where it counted, and was able to maintain that position.
We did have a yellow flag just a few moments ago, and that was Manuel Biancola in the Ferrari having a spin. He dropped actually out of the top 10 down to 33rd. 5 drivers have retired so far. Ferzan Özkan and James Parker, we spoke a bit earlier. I think he just bailed out after being spun around. Moreno Silka and Tobias Pfeiffer retired out at the race after 8 laps. Hani Al-Sabati, also a man you'd expect to see inside the top 10, he retired after 2 laps. So not too many retirements, certainly not like we saw in the pro race. And I don't think we're going to even see back markers, such as the compressed nature of this pack.
And it shows, doesn't it, as we've been saying, Ben, just the level at which these guys operate, because they're not making mistakes, and therefore it is hard to overtake. Some very good attack, some very good defence. And as you saw from camera, you have got to work really hard to make an overtake stick.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just because of the level that we have in ACC, and this is not an easy game. When you watch these cars and watch the characteristics of these cars, you think, it's easy, I could do that. I tell you, it's really difficult just to do a single lap without the car stepping out. You do have to really treat it like you would do a real test session if you're doing a test session or a race. Give it a couple of laps, get everything up to temperature, and then the car comes to you. Think about the aerodynamics. Think about how much those aerodynamics influence the car at high speed and low speed. It all somehow seems almost emphasized as well over the real world, because there are other senses that you don't have. You don't have the feeling of the rear end moving around. You get a little bit of sensation from the steering going light as the car rotates, but it's certainly nowhere near bum in the seat of the pants. Ben,
having said all you've just said, how much quicker on a lap would you be than these sim guys, do you think?
Oh, it'd be 5 or 6 seconds off easily.
Oh, I thought you were going to be quicker. Because you've got a great understanding. I've never heard anybody sum it up quite so well as you've done. And the overtake coming down in, side by side.
It's for 4th place. It is Noyox versus Tonitsa. The McLaren for 4th on the inside line. And he still can't get the job done. Out wide over the curb goes Tonitsa, but still, John, the Ferrari hangs on.
If you haven't got yourself slightly nose in front coming into the second part of club, you seem to lose out on the exit speed. That's what Tonitsa was able to do with the Ferrari, maintain the advantage. That's what we saw Hosseini doing. So many laps. He was actually, on a number of occasions, all but overtaken, but he had track position to give him the advantage off club corner on the run down to Abbey, and that's what we've just seen with the Ferrari over the McLaren.
This Ferrari does look fantastic, doesn't it, in that livery? It's done a great job.
Yes.
All of these cars, actually, whether it be pro or sim, lots and lots of new liveries out there, and they do look absolutely stunning. One side story that we had coming into this weekend on the chat was whether we would have a wet race here at Silverstone, because ACC simulates the weather like the real world. A lot of platforms don't, but ACC, you can have a thunderstorm, you can have rain, you can have light rain, you can have fog, anything. Track temperature at the moment, 31 degrees, 26 air temperature. That will affect, in the same way, the real world. It'll affect the brakes and the tyres and the cooling of the car. But it's been cloudy throughout, therefore no chance of rain in the last 10 minutes.
Okay, and we've got 11 3/4 minutes on the clock. Patrick Selva is, I think, already preparing his victory speech for the conversation he has with Jack at the end of the race when he gets put into the caster channel, because he has dominated this. The gap is down again by a gnat's crotchet to 13.8 seconds, but Arthur Camera, try as he might, he's just not going to get there in time. We've got them 3 abreast. Look, going down towards Stoke Corner, lower down the order, and in the middle of all of that is the Porsche of Dietrich. Around the outside line goes Cecilia, so he is in 8th place, but Dietrich in the Porsche is in danger of dropping back now as they head down to the end of Vale. Hosseini goes by. Now number 1, finally, Noyox has done it. He's got past Tonitza at the end of Vale. So, after something like 49 minutes of trying, Nils Noyox has got himself up past Tonitza in the Ferrari.
And that looked like it happened coming down into Vale. The Ferrari maybe just slightly wrong-footed, but it's Garcia in the Bentley, who now having the opportunity, is he going to be able to make it? Another pass on the Ferrari in the one lap. The Bentley looks the better of the two cars, certainly the way that Garcia can choose where to place his car. He's got more options than the Ferrari Tonitza seems to have.
So Tonitza, the reigning Formula 1 esports champion, loses a place. He's got Alberto Garcia in the Bentley, now breathing down his neck. And again, you see Noyox, having been released, he's just gone, isn't he? He checks out straight away, gaps the opposition down towards Brooklands and sets off in pursuit of the traffic ahead. So he's got to make up 2 seconds before he can think about doing anything about Amir Hosseini now.
I think that's possible. Husseini's last lap was a 59.7, and he's just done a 59.5. Noyox, I think, can still do 58s. So with 10 minutes to go, I think he's got the opportunity to get himself onto the podium, and we'll have a meeting like we did in Monza, Noyox versus Husseini.
Well, there's 2.1 seconds between 3rd and 4th, and there's 9.5 minutes or so remaining, so it is eminently possible. Husseini has picked up the pace, but likewise, the Chargers are doing the same thing.
It's true enough, isn't it? There is Garcia then onto Hanger Straight. Amir Hosseini hanging on to his 3rd place, but Noyox 2 seconds behind him, 9.5 minutes on the clock. And he's all fired up. He's got to make up 1.8 seconds already. The gap is coming down in sectors. And Tonitza is on the back foot all of a sudden, because having lost a place and lost chunks of ground to the McLaren, now the Bentley, Alberto Garcia at the helm of it, is crawling all over the back of Tonitza's Ferrari into the end of Vale, ready for Club Corner. And is that an area of the circuit where the door might come open and give Garcia a chance? We'll see in a moment when the cars come back into view. Meantime, 13.1 seconds is the gap between the top 2.
Ferrari's pulled a fraction on the Bentley coming out of Club. I thought maybe Bentley would have been closer. Go through Farm, then into the braking. As we hard on the brakes as they go into Village Corner. It was the next corner loop. That's where the 2nd place for Camera managed to get past Hosseini. It was a clever move, but the Bentley not sufficiently close to do anything to affect Tonitza. And again, on to now Wellington Straight. The gap, 4 car lengths between the Ferrari and the Bentley, running 5th and 6th respectively.
Here they come then down towards Brooklands. You see the way the Bentley closes right up there. The British brand catching the Italian car as they come through now into Luffield. So the challenge being mounted once more for 5th place. Garcia, 8 minutes on the clock. We've got 31 laps out of the Pro race, and 26 are in the book already from the leader Patrick Selva here as he's gone across the timing line in the Racing OM3 McLaren. This is the view from Giorgio Simonini, who is in 9th place. That is Jesus Cecilia's Aston Martin just up the road ahead in the Garage 59 colours, going through Copse Corner.
David, just looking at, if I walked into a room and I would swear this is a live event.
Absolutely.
The way the Aston took Copse, it looked absolutely identical to rail racing. And this onboard shot gives you every sense of what a racing driver in a real context would feel. They're driving absolutely identically to if this was a live race at Silverstone on a beautiful sunny afternoon.
And it's just little things, isn't it? Like the slight discrepancies in the colour of the tarmac at certain places. You know, it's exactly as Silverstone is, or any circuit is. It's not the same colour all the way around. Every tiny facet has been put into this to make it so realistic. It is outstanding.
I tell you what, Silverstone's having a lovely christening. Its first proper race. I know the Pomeroy Trophy takes place at the back end of February before we had all this lockdown, but this is the first proper international event at Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, and it's been, well, both events have been fantastic.
I'd go along with that, no question. So here they come, and Tonitza versus Garcia. Battle is still between the two of them. Up they come out of the loop, and
Is that a spin coming out of the loop?
Yes, it is. Yeah, Husseini's gone.
Ah, okay, the Mercedes rotates then. So was that a tap, or has he cracked under the pressure, Ben? What do you think?
I wasn't watching, but I was watching Nils Neujoks, and Neujoks wasn't close enough to make contact with him. So I think Husseini's just lost the rear end there, dropped 7.5 seconds. He's now in 7th position, but way behind Benito. No chance then for him to really recover, I don't think now. And Neujoks gets an easy 3rd.
Now, Neujoks and Hosseini are being investigated. Something is being looked at. Might not have been that incident, might have been another one, but we've just had a message come up that says on lap 26 that something is being looked at that happened between those two. So we'll keep you posted. Hosseini then 7th when he went over the timing line. Patrick Selva still clear in the lead. And Camera, of course, in that 2nd place, well clear of anybody else. Lap 28 we now run, and into the last 5 3/4 minutes of this first silver race within the SRO Esport GT series.
And John mentioned a little bit earlier about the opportunity for others to come and participate. If you are watching, and I know we've had a lot of people come across from the end of the Nürburgring 24 hours to watch this race and watch these pro sim drivers compete. If you think that you are better than these guys, the AM competition and the AM hot lapping competition to get yourself a space in that competition opens up this afternoon, opens up this evening until the 10th of May, and the first race is on the 16th of May. So find yourself. And let's see what you can do versus these guys.
Absolutely so. Now, we've got battles raging on amongst the traffic, including Simonini here, number 150 in the Audi. He is currently in 8th place, having just got ahead of Cecilia as they go now through Abbey behind the pair of them. Philippe Simard in the Bentley. And the Bentley almost has a bite at the back of the Aston there. Jan-Marcel Dietrich in the Porsche next in the queue. He's fallen back a little bit as this race has gone on. The leading gap is down fractionally once more. Selva to Camera, 12 seconds. Number 23 Porsche that started early on. Eamon Murphy still in 12th place there.
We are hearing from our YouTube chat because they have the opportunity to ride on board with Nils Neujoks and watch the whole thing from his perspective. He's streaming on his own channel, and it does seem like there was contact between him and Husseini. Neujoks going into the back of Husseini, but some people on Twitter and on YouTube saying that Husseini brake tested Neujoks, others saying that he was too late on the brakes. So obviously something is going to be very tricky for race direction to decide on, much like the incident in Monza.
Get the telemetry sheets out. That's the only true way we will know whether it was one driver's fault or another driver's fault.
True enough. Well, they're having a look at it, but these two have got previous, haven't they? So Neujoks in the back of Hosseini at Monza. Sounds like it's happened again here. Lap 26, the incident took place on, and it is in the stewarding channel saying we're having a look at it. So Patrick Selva, now 12.8 last time, 11.6 seconds. That gap is coming down, isn't it? I don't think it's going to come down enough before the end, but it's interesting to see the way it's coming down.
There's less than 3.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, unless it's a problem for Selva, a big problem, it's not going to change, but just to keep an eye to that, because Camera is not giving up. I suppose that's the point I'm getting to. He might have to settle for 2nd place, but he is pushing every inch of the way.
And that's what a driver should do. A racing driver is not going out for an afternoon's drive around Silverstone Circuit just for the pleasure of doing it. He's there to max out everything he's got. He does not know that Selva may have a problem or not. You have to assume that he could have a problem, and therefore you have to make every effort to run down that car ahead of you.
Well, there is another battle that's going to go right the way to the end. 4th and 5th they run. Tonitza in the Ferrari, Garcia in the Bentley, cut back, Cecilia in the Aston Martin, and now Philippe Simard in the Bentley, tucked up behind him. 9th and 10th, those two. 2.5 minutes to go. 2 more laps I think we can squeeze out of this. Again, it's going to be 31, isn't it, like the pro race? Now Hosseini, 7th after that spin. This is 4th and 5th. Tonitza and Garcia into Luffield they go now. Now David Tonitza hanging on to position, Garcia close, but not as close as he needs to be to make a move down towards Copse, unless the Bentley can boom up onto the tail of the Ferrari heading towards Copse corner now. So there is this lap and one more within the time remaining. 11 seconds, still the margin between the top two. It is coming down. It won't come down enough in time, but Camera is throwing everything at catching the leader, Patrick Selva.
Yeah, but this little battle going on for fourth place, Tunizia in the Ferrari, to me, has done enough to sustain performance to finish fourth. Garcia, who I had thought might get through a little bit earlier when that loss of position, when Tunizia lost his position to Nijax, I thought that might be the chance that the Bentley would need or would take. Coming down Hanger Straight, looks as if the Bentley is closing, but well, into Stoke Corner the gap has certainly have, but whether it will be the same on the exit or not, he's not given up. He's doing precisely what he's there to do, and that's try and get that position away.
So Alberto Garcia then almost into the back of the Ferrari, again riding on board. How realistic does that look? Fantastic. Through club, double apex right, it opens up now onto the straight. Past the Formula One pits on the right-hand side, up now towards the right-hand flick of Abbey. The Bentley just a little bit too far back. Bite of curb on the inside, run it up to the curb on the outside. Now left through Farm, heading up towards Village. There, the Bentley looks the quicker, but he can't get there in time in order to challenge at Village. What about the loop? Is there a gap on the inside? Not really.
No, there's no gap. I mean, it was certainly being covered by Tunizia, but he wasn't far enough. Coming back, is this Hosseini, this back marker, no doubt.
This is for sixth, isn't it? It's Hosseini trying to get past Enzo Benito for sixth place, and he's done it.
And he's got past.
Yeah. So Hosseini, Ben, trying to make amends here, got himself back in the top six. That was brave stuff.
Great move from Hosseini, and showing that he can attack, because we haven't really seen him do much of attacking. It's always been defence, 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 and now actually a nice clean move, and Benito kind of having to just let him go. Benito looks like he's really, really struggling, which is a big surprise, because those Ferraris seemed really good in the pro race at the end of the race, and looks like he's going to lose another one.
Well, just quickly, on the last lap of this race, which of us would choose our driver of this race?
Oh, it's a good question. Patrick Selva has done nothing wrong, but I'm still very impressed as a driver by Arthur Camera.
Benji.
Yeah, I'd love to see more from Niels Neujoks. I think he's really, really not had the opportunity to flourish yet, and perhaps in this race he hasn't found himself in too many problems, but I'm looking forward to Neujoks actually getting on the top step at some point.
And John, your driver of the day? Or driver of the race?
Purely because he's given us an excellent masterclass on how to defend, you have to say Hosseini, albeit that he got overtaken in the loop, and that was a great pass by Camera in the McLaren. Nevertheless, he got spun around, he's come back, he's overtaken, so I'm going to go with Hosseini.
Okay, well, Patrick Selva is going to be the man that takes the points. He's going to be the man that puts the ballast into the McLaren for the next round of the championship. Now, bear in mind, if you finish on the podium, you take the combined weight across every car in the brand. So that means that a 1, 2, 3 for McLaren means these cars are going to take 25 kilos for a win, 17 for second, and a further 10 for third into the next round at Spa. They're going to be very heavy cars there, but at Silverstone it is a win for McLaren. Patrick Selva wins the opening round of the SRO Esports GT Series Championship 2020. A great drive by Patrick Selva. Arthur Camera is going to come through now to take second place. The gap at the end, 9 seconds. Makes you wonder what he could have done had he got through sooner. Third, another McLaren. Niels Neujoks it is that comes home for third place. Now, what about fourth? David Tunizia or Alberto Garcia? It is Ferrari ahead of Bentley. And sixth will go to Mercedes. Amir Hosseini fending off the challenge of Enzo Benito. Then Simonini in 8th, Cecilia 9th. And it is in 10th place, in number 9, Philippe Simard. Well, Patrick Selva, a very impressive drive indeed. John, I know you talked about how well Hosseini had driven, but from Patrick Selva's point of view, out front, just perfect drive, not a wheel out of place that we saw.
I mean, absolutely, I agree entirely with what you said. We hardly got to see him, to see what he was like on the racetrack, but he did precisely the same thing Jordan Pepper did in the pro event we saw a little bit earlier. Didn't put a wheel wrong, had clear road, clear air all the time, and it was his race to lose. He didn't make any mistakes. He did a contact between Lamborghinis and the slowing down. That's not particularly intelligent. But well, actually, it was the finish of the lap. They're still finishing this race. But I mean, absolutely, what we saw from the victor, it was unbelievable, just wheel perfect driving.
And Ben, we have seen in that not only another very competitive race, but, and we made the point during the race itself, the level at which the sim community operates. So Patrick Selva, the race winner. Arthur Camara taking second place. Niels Neujoks for third ahead of Tonitza, Garcia, Hosseini, Bonito, Simonini, Cecilia and Sima at the end of our first SRO Esport GT Series Silver Series race, won here at Silverstone by a very impressive Patrick Selva.
Well, what a great race in the silver class. Hugely impressive drive from Patrick Selva, although to a degree it was handed to him on a plate, wasn't it? After that drama in the early stages, that Neujoks and Petrochenko collision, dropping Neujoks down the order. He then climbed back up the order into third place. We believe the stewards are looking at that. So once again, Niels Neujoks under a little bit of investigation. But a really entertaining race, that one. It was a proper race out at the front, and I have to agree with the guys in commentary there that Hosseini's defensive drive for the first 18 laps was really quite something. There was that train of 7 or 8 cars behind. A reminder, if you're just joining us, that Jordan Pepper won the pro race earlier on. He's at the top of the pro standings, and it is Patrick Selva who has won the silver class. The pro standings and the pro class is for the real world racing drivers. The silver class is for the top line sim drivers that we've invited here to compete in the SRO Esports GT series. And this championship, its next race is going to be in 2 weeks' time. So the 10th of May at Spa-Francorchamps. And as David was saying, McLaren are going to be a lot heavier after their performance here because of the weight penalties. You can read all of the regulations, by the way, on the SRO Esports website. We've got some drivers coming in for a chat. I suppose we will start with Arthur Camara. Arthur, thank you very much for coming in to join us. How did you enjoy that race? A very strong second place, but it wasn't even easy to get past Hosseini.
Yes, indeed. I enjoyed it a lot because I can say from my side, I drove very clean today, although I was not happy with qualifying. I think I got the maximum out of it, even though I would have thought it wouldn't be Patrick in P1, but congratulations to him. Yes, I'm super happy with P2, very excited with the fight with Amir, and I'm glad that I was able to overtake him clean and, just get P2 this way.
Great. Well, then that must give you good confidence for the rest of the season. Are you looking forward to Spa now, although the McLarens are going to be a bit heavy?
Yes, the McLarens for sure will get some weight at it, and I'm not sure if Spa will be a better ground for the car than Silverstone, probably not. But yeah, it's, I think, for the whole season about consistency, and it's the same for everything. Probably the Mercedes will be good in in Spa, so it will just change with which brand, which manufacturer gets the weight penalty next.
Okay,
and
great.
in the end, we'll see.
Cool. Well, congratulations, Arthur. Thank you very much for joining us. A second place finish there for Arthur Camara. Now let's move on to Niels Neujoks, who, well, Niels, I mean, talk us through your race. Firstly, did you have a hit with Petrochenko that dropped you the places? We didn't see it ourselves. And then your move for third place at the end was robust as well.
So first of all, I didn't know what happened there early on in the race. I think he just outbraked himself quite a bit. I think it was at least 5-10 meters late or so. So he hit me. It was a bit unfortunate. I didn't take too much damage, I believe. And then had a couple scraps with a few guys. Great fight with David, especially. He was very, very fair. We left each other space. I think that took a fair end. And then again with Amir, it wasn't so fortunate. I'm not sure if it was lag again or if he was braking right at the apex, but I totally didn't expect him to slow down that much, and that's why I tapped him at the back again.
Okay, and so, but are you happy with the race overall? It's difficult to work out, I guess.
First would have been better, but I think given the circumstances, P3 is totally fine, and good race for Arthur, especially with his in his first race for G2. Was a great performance in the end, and he, I think, had the harder fight to get there. So kudos.
Cool. Thank you very much, Nils, for joining us. And you mentioned there a nice clean fight with David Tonitza. David is on the line now. How was that for you, David?
Yeah, it was a great race. The quali was pretty good. I started in P4, and then fortunately I had a great pace in the first part, so I stayed within the McLaren, the Mercedes guys, and then at the end I struggled a bit. I had a great fight with Nils, but yeah, all in all it was a great race. So GG, it was a really good show, I think.
Yeah, it certainly was. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Jack.
No worries. See you later, Tonzilla. Good to have David Tonitza joining us there as well. David, thoughts on what you've heard there from the drivers?
Well, as ever, one or two hard luck stories. Arthur Camara taking it on the chin, I suppose, because that could have been the one that got away in some senses. He had the pace, but by being mired in traffic early on, just couldn't get through. But it starts to piece together some of the backstories to all of that. And it also is, I think, going to give us a little bit more of a steer now, because people are with this car for the championship, of what we can expect out of them as the season goes on. But as we made the point, now these McLarens are all going to get weight for Spa of all places. I still think it's going to be a very different race that we have there.
And David, you have some news on some other elements.
Well, yes, because while we're in this lockdown, there's lots of stories and lots of great personalities within GT racing. Don't forget, of course, that there's not just SRO's esports championships, but SRO has European, Asian, British and American championships for GT3 and for GT4 cars. And so next week, we're going to start work on a GT World podcast. And
nice.
We'll try and get those out every fortnight and talk to some of the drivers, some of the teams. We'll probably have a long chat with Watty at some point as well, which will fill most of a month or so. But yes, GT World is a podcast we're going to start work on next week. So we'll keep you posted.
And I'm being told that Nils Noyox has been given a penalty. I don't know what exactly the penalty are. 12.5 seconds, I believe, is the penalty for Nils Noyox. So that presumably promotes David Tonitza up into the podium places. So in the end, Nils Noyox does get a penalty, as he did in the charity race in Monza. Watty, your thoughts on that penalty for Noyox after the contact?
Well, there's a penalty. I mean, if you spin a driver around and you don't suffer anything in the incident, then you're entitled to serve a penalty as a consequence. So that's probably the thinking that's gone into it. The thing that I've been impressed with the sim drivers is they sound even more professional.
Yes.
You know, okay, being interviewed by you isn't a stretch, but nevertheless, they sound absolutely so professional. It makes some of the professional drivers look not very good.
Okay. No, I think you're right. I'm not exactly asking the probing questions, am I? Very much. How was your day?
Fair weather, man, Jack.
Exactly. How was your day, Watty? Have you enjoyed this first round of the championship?
Well, I thought it was two excellent races. I think there's lots more I can do in terms of my equipment is probably a bit older than most of the commentators. That's what I'm trying to say. So I need to get all that up to speed to enable me to contribute even more than I was able to do this afternoon. And I look forward to being able to do that.
And we look forward for you to be able to do that as well. Thank you.
I know you do, Jack. I know.
No, I do.
I know you mean it tongue in cheek, Jack. I know.
I mean it honestly, from the bottom of my heart. I do. Okay, look, let's not have this argument on air. Ben Constantiouris, your thoughts on the day?
Yeah, fantastic to see. Actually, not so many penalties in that silver race. I think 6 or 7 decisions made by race control over 24, I think, for the professional racing drivers race. So that kind of gives you a feel as to how good that silver race was. Unfortunately, though, the incidents that we did see were high level. And of course, Nils Noyox, 2 races, 2 penalties. He drops from 3rd down to, I think, 6th or 7th in this one. And with a heavy car going to the next round, he's going to really struggle.
David, so we have our two championship leaders then. Jordan Pepper at the top of the pro class, Patrick Selva at the top of the silver class. Next race, 2 weeks in Spa-Francorchamps. What are you looking forward to?
All that virtual beer, obviously, in Belgium. No, I think we're going to have two
It's better for
races.
you. It's better for you.
Well, it's closer to me in a sense. It's just in my fridge out there. No, I think it's going to be a very different type of race because, as I say, now you start adding the weight on, and you know how hilly Spa is. That's going to really affect. But the McLarens in the Silver Series, with so much from the weight carried from first plus second plus third, they're going to be like oil tankers. They're going to be so heavy. So the silver thing, the silver concept, I think is going to be a completely different thing. You'll have a total fresh look at the head of that race, different brands, different drivers. But what we have seen, and I think it will continue, is top quality racing through the best drivers in the pro and the silver world of GT racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And worth pointing out that a Bentley won in the pro class, so that'll get some extra weight. A second place McLaren in the pro class too. But the difference being, you add up all of the weight penalties for each brand.
On the podium, yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So if you take, as McLaren did in the silver, a lockout of the top three, they are very heavy. But if it's just one car in the top three, you carry the weight that car gained.
Yeah, indeed. So thank you very much for joining us in the first race of the SRO Esports GT Series, this new 2020 championship that has got underway today at Silverstone. If you missed any of the action, of course, if you're watching on YouTube, you can go back to the start and re-watch it. We will be back in 2 weeks' time, the 10th of May at Spa, for the second round of the SRO Esports GT Series. The pro class today won by Jordan Pepper, Ben Barnicoat finishing in second, Luigi Di Lorenzo in third, and that's how the championship stands for the professional real-world racing drivers from the GT World Challenge powered by AWS that'll be getting underway later this year. And in the silver grid, Patrick Selva, the winner, Arthur Kammerer in second, and David Tonitza promoted up into a podium spot after a penalty for Nils Noyux. Those are the three in the top of the silver class and as a result, the silver championship. Huge thanks to David Addison, to Ben Constanduros, and of course John Watson for joining us and providing the commentary. We'll see you in 2 weeks' time, the 10th of May in Spa for the next round. There's a new SRO GT podcast coming up soon that David has just announced, so make sure you keep your eyes peeled for that across all of social media. SRO Esports if you want to know more about this SRO Esports GT series. But from now, for us, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time on the 10th of May at Spa for more intense online GT racing action.